Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Evil Sailing Group. My crew is from another world. Chapter 61. The crimson blood spattered out, the wooden thorn that Obito stabbed into the chest of the celestial dragons. The moment Obito's voice fell, the branch grew. Dozens of sharp wooden thorns directly burst out of the celestial dragons' bodies. This made the celestial dragons look like hedgehogs on the spot. Puff! The celestial dragons on both sides saw this sudden scene. He was so frightened that his legs went limp on the spot, and he collapsed to the ground. Flop, flop, unparalleled fear enveloped their bodies and minds. The blood on his face also faded away in an instant. Two celestial dragons, a man and a woman, slumped on the ground, staring at Obito with shocking pupils, and even the speaker was too frightened to speak. They would never have imagined that anyone would dare to stand against the celestial dragons. I would never have thought that someone would dare to kill celestial dragons so blatantly, killing the nobles of the world. The surrounding marines also turned pale with horror after seeing the celestial dragons being killed by Obito. Isn't it? Are these guys crazy? Those are the nobles of the world, celestial dragons. They actually dared to kill celestial dragons 600, aren't they afraid of the world government's encirclement and crusade? Before the marines had recovered from the killing of the celestial dragons, a cold and calm voice suddenly came from their side. Compared to those guys, you should worry about yourself first. Marine was taken aback when he heard that. Subconsciously turned his head to look at the source of the sound. But just as he turned his head, it was Hungry Wolf's punch the size of a sandbag that met him. Boom! The dull beating sound echoed. The marine immediately flew upside down and hit the wooden wall on one side heavily. Boom! 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 The other side, on the deck of the ship fighting the pirates. Looking at the battle taking place on the warship, Madara waved lightly. The wooden dragon hovering over the bow of the war pirate group also slowly dispersed. Yiji Yutai at the side couldn't help but startled when he saw this, and asked with some doubts. Mr. Madara, won't you make a move? Madara glanced at Yiguyutai, and said flatly. No. Although Yiguyutai still had some doubts, he didn't continue to ask you. See Cat, just now, it seems that Madara is also right, the other party's statement that he wants to enslave his group is a bit fluctuating. But right now, only Hungry Wolf and Obito rushed to the enemy ship. This made Yiji Yutai a little surprised. Otoko Yuta would not have thought of that either. The reason why Madara didn't make a move. It's all because the opponent is too weak. So weak that he can't even warm him up a little bit. In the rear, Lucchini and the others watched Obito kill the celestial dragons, and were so frightened that they collapsed to the ground. Crazy, crazy. Do they really not know what fear is? What is fear? Killing the celestial dragons, the nobles of the world, is even crazier than hitting the marine base. Looking at the figures of Zhang-Jie and others, Lucchini only felt that she was in hell. And these people around are all vicious demons. As time passed, the howling and screaming of warships gradually subsided. The people on the coast watched the marine being massacred and the celestial dragons being massacred, all of them turned pale with fright. Not long after that, Zhang-Jie's ship slowly passed by the warship. Obito jumped back to the boat with one hand on the head of the female celestial dragons who had uttered such raves earlier. Captain, what to do with this guy? Zhang-Jie glanced sideways at the celestial dragons. Before he could speak, the female celestial dragons yelled at Zhang-Jie in shock. Let me go, you untouchables, know who I am. I am the noble of the world, celestial dragons. You're gods, how dare you treat me like this? Upon hearing the celestial dragons shouting, Zhang-Jie immediately frowned and waved his hands. Kill him and throw him into the sea. Obito didn't talk nonsense when he heard that. Without even looking down, Obito grabbed the celestial dragons' heads and twisted them violently. Crack! The neck of the female celestial dragons rotated 180 degrees, and it died immediately. Obito immediately threw her body into the sea like throwing garbage. Boom! Zhang-Jie looked up at the crowd gathered on the shore. Seeing this, the masses could not help but shudder. See, the pirates are coming. Run away, we'll be killed. Rumble, rumble. Following a series of noises, the people gathered on the coast all fled away in a short while. The ships of the pirate group also docked slowly at this time. TCH, just now you said you should thank us for coming, but now it's good, they all ran away. Hungry Wolf scratched his forehead and said with a look of disdain. Zhang Jie didn't care about it at all, and turned to look at Lucchini and the others. You go to prepare for the purchase of supplies, I will go shopping everywhere. If you can't solve the money problem, then come to me with the boss. With that said, Zhang Jie stepped off the boat and set foot on the long-lost land. All the crew members also disembarked at this moment. It was at this time that a woman with long golden hair and a long sword hanging from her waist slowly walked out of the alleyway on one side. Came to the middle of the street entrance, the middle of Zhang Jie's front road. Seeing the person coming, Zhang Jie, Obito and Yi Yutai were all startled slightly. In the next second, I saw the woman in front of the road smiling at Zhang Jie. Long time no see, Your Highness. Holy Land, Mariajoy. In a magnificent castle, in a fountain courtyard. The 5 elders were either standing or sitting, quietly listening to the report of a man in a black suit in front of them. The main culprit in this incident is the Pirates Conquest Group led by Zhang Jie, who has offered a bounty of 490 million baileys. Currently, the 3 celestial dragons have been killed, the guards are all killed, and the marine is injured. Before the man in black finished his report, standing proudly, a burly old man with a big beard said in a cold voice. Marine doesn't matter at all. These pirates are so presumptuous, even to the point of blatantly killing the celestial dragons. In the final analysis, it is the gang of marines who do not do their job effectively. Sitting on the chair, the old man holding a sword in his arms also said leisurely when he heard the words. Sengoku should have received the news, right? The man in black nodded. Yes, Admiral is expected to be mobilized soon. No, it's not enough, it's far from enough. The old man with white curly hair spoke in a deep voice while holding a cane, and then said again. The blatant killing of celestial dragons is no longer a simple matter. It can be solved by mobilizing a general to finish it. This matter has already affected the authority of the world government. On the side, the old man with the long beard heard the words and nodded in agreement. Being a pirate who ignored the authority of the world government and blatantly killed the nobles of the world, if this kind of thing gets out, it will have a serious impact on the government. It's not enough to just judge the group of pirates. This matter will rot in the sea forever. The old man with short blonde hair who was sitting on the steps with his hands folded in front of his chest also spoke in a deep voice at this time. Go tell Sengoku, he'll know what to do. Yes, the man in black replied, turned around and left the courtyard. Marineford, where the naval headquarters base is located. Boom, are you kidding me? Wearing a white marine coat, the middle-aged man with a long black beard like a braid slapped the table angrily and said angrily. On the side, several warships wearing marine coats looked at each other, not daring to say anything. The middle-aged man had an ugly expression on his face, and his hands were clenched into fists. And he is the current marshal of naval headquarters, Sengoku of Buddha. Just for that so-called reputation, so many innocent people are going to be implicated. Hearing this, several generals wearing marine coats also lowered their heads at this moment. Just at this moment, a sound of footsteps came from outside the room. Da da da. A moment later, a man in a long white trench coat and a bowler hat came to the door. Looking at Sengoku with an ugly face inside the room. The man also scratched his head, and said helplessly. Perhaps for those innocent people, this matter is indeed too heavy. Sengoku slowly raised his head, looking at the man in white at the door. Isn't it enough to kill all those pirates and execute them on the spot? The man in white looked at Sengoku and shook his head. You understand, that's what the higher-ups mean, and the people up there seem to be very angry about it. So, do it. Hearing the words of the man in white, Sengoku couldn't bear to close his eyes. At this time, Zhang Jie and his group were heading towards the center of the town. Prince, on the way, a cry of astonishment came out. Lu Xini and the others looked at Zhang Jie with disbelief on their faces. Seeing that Lucchini and the others were so surprised at this time. The woman who was leading the way in front also looked back curiously with some doubts. Don't you know, I used to be His Royal Highness's bodyguard. At the end of the conversation, a smile appeared on the woman's face. And she is exactly Zhang Jie's former guard in Nuo Rake Kingdom, Erika. Lucchini and the others subconsciously glanced at Zhang Jie, thinking to themselves. How could he tell us? Why are you here? Looking at Erika's figure, Zhang Jie asked doubtfully. Now she should stay in Nuo Rake Kingdom, by Elsa's side. Hearing Zhang Jie's inquiry, Erika was silent for a while. I'll keep the story short. After you left the Nuo Rake Kingdom, Princess Elsa, no, it should be said that it was Your Majesty, she quickly took control of the Nuo Rake Kingdom. This is also due to your cleanup actions before you left, which removed a lot of resistance for His Majesty. And I bid farewell to Your Majesty after His Majesty took control of the Nuo Rake Kingdom, and traveled far away alone. I just didn't expect to meet you here. Hearing Erika's narration, Zhang Jie nodded thoughtfully. It seems that I have been delayed a lot of time in the previous voyage. First lost at sea, then detoured to marine base. This made it possible for Erika to meet him on the same island at this time even though she was a long time late on the voyage. Behind, Lucchini and the others looked at Zhang Jie with extremely complicated expressions. They figured it out. This guy is not a king, he ran out to be a pirate. Evil. It's too evil. Others come out to be pirates when they can't get along. How could this guy be a king? The complex emotions on the faces of Lucchini and the others did not last long. They were instructed by Zhang Jie to purchase and replenish the supplies on board. Meanwhile, on the other side, what Zhang Jie and others didn't know, echoed with the sound of a silver phone bug. A huge storm is rapidly gathering. Almost at the same time, nearly 10,000 Marines were dispatched urgently. 10 Marine warships were recruited from various places. Boom, boom, da da da. A chilling atmosphere permeated the base. Countless Marines, like ants, boarded the Marine battleship neatly and mightily. A tall man wearing a white Marine coat and yellow stripes also arrived at the base at this time. Looking at the terrified soldiers in front of him, and a warship docked at the port, the man couldn't help but be speechless. Scary. This battle is really scary. And he is one of the 3 admirals of Naval Headquarters, Kizaru. Just at this moment, a man also wearing a marine coat came to Kizaru's side and said hello in a deep voice. Kizaru Admiral. Kizaru looked sideways after hearing the sound, and responded with his usual expression. Don't worry about me, you are the main force. After thinking for a while, Kizaru spoke to the Marine General again. Is it almost time? General Marine nodded. Yes, we are going to sail soon. Kizaru nodded, and while walking towards the battleship, he raised his hand and dialed the phone bug in his hand. Moxie, I'm Kizaru. Yes, I'm already in place. In town, under the leadership of Erika, Zhang Jie came to the hotel where she is currently staying. Erika originally meant to bring Zhang Jie and others to the hotel to rest. However, the plan cannot keep up with the changes. They failed to enter the hotel as planned. Not to mention Zhang Jie, even Erika, who stayed in the hotel for 2 days, was turned away. The reason for 850 is because she walked with Zhang Jie, a group of pirates who killed celestial dragons. Sorry, Erika apologized to Zhang Jie apologetically. At this moment, it's not just the hotel doors that are closed. Even the doors and windows of the entire town were closed at this moment. There was no one on the street, and everyone hid in the house, for fear of being affected by Zhang Jie and other pirates who killed the celestial dragons. However, although they didn't go out, they all stayed in the house. But they are behind the door and the window, always watching every move of Zhang Jie and others. These sneaky guys are really uncomfortable. Hungry Wolf frowned, obviously displeased. But this is also normal. It wouldn't be comfortable for anyone to be watched secretly by so many people. Zhang Jie glanced at Erika, and then at the closed hotel door. Responded to Erika's apology. It doesn't matter, they are just afraid that we will also cause them to be rafted by the world government. Keeping us out is also a way of self-protection to ensure that you will not encounter disaster in the future. Hearing that Zhang Jie could understand, Erika was also slightly relieved. I thought that if I couldn't even do this well, I would be even more useless and unreliable in Zhang Jie's heart. Now it seems that such a thing will not happen. However, Erika just breathed a sigh of relief. I just heard Zhang Jie speak again. While this was the right and smart decision, it was also a wrong and stupid decision. Quote. Erika froze for a moment, and asked back with some puzzlement. Right and wrong. Why? Zhang Jie looked at Erika. Because I'm a pirate. To say he is smart is to avoid disasters that may happen in the future. To say he is stupid is because he doesn't understand the current situation. Is the catastrophe that may happen in the future more serious, or the catastrophe that will happen immediately now is more serious? Having said that, Erica hasn't realized what's going on yet. The hungry wolf strode out, came to the door of the hotel, and kicked open the closed door fiercely. Boom! Under the huge strength of the hungry wolf, the entire door of the hotel, and even the hotel owner behind the door, were kicked away. He fell heavily to the ground. Boom! Ouch! A howl of pain spread. Zhang Jie and the others went straight into the hotel to join the army as if nothing had happened. Erica, on the other hand, was stunned in place, her brain shutting down for a while. She never expected that Zhang Jie would use such a simple and rude method to directly break into the door. Fina held Mona's hand tightly, walking in the silent alley, without saying a word. Behind her, Meng Na, who was being led, looked at Fina's drooping head, and couldn't help calling out. Fina. Fina was startled when her name was called. When she came back to her senses, she turned around and asked Meng Na Dao in a gentle voice with a smile on her face. What's the matter? Are you hungry? This time I have to wait, the mealtime is not so fast. Meng Na looked at Fina for a long time, then smiled and said. Mona is not hungry. Is this our home from now on? Fina was silent for a while before she nodded. Then she bent down and hugged Meng Na again, and said apologetically. I'm sorry, we could have a better home, it's all my fault that I didn't grasp it. I'm sorry, Mona. At the end of the sentence, Fina's tone was already crying. After hearing this, Meng Na could only touch Fina's head with a smile, and said in relief. It's okay, it's not Na's fault. The other side. Lucchini and the others who were in charge of purchasing supplies were also hindered at this time. In the whole town, there is no shop, big or small, willing to sell things to them. Not only that, but Luxini and the others were chased and scolded like broom stars. They almost heard all kinds of dirty words. But they didn't care much about it. Because rather than being scolded, they are more afraid that they will not buy enough supplies to go back to the business, which will arouse the anger of Zhang Jie. What are we going to do now? Not only are they refusing to sell us things, but they are also driving us away like broomsticks. If things continue like this, we will definitely not get all the things together. Jero said anxiously. Augustus also looked ugly, subconsciously stroked the blind left eye, his voice trembling. It's not okay to go on like this. If we don't even do this well, he will kill us. Lucchini on the side was also shuddered by Augustus's sudden words. Looking at those shops again, Lucchini gritted her teeth. If it really doesn't work, then we can only force it. I'd rather kill these guys than go back and face those demons empty-handed. A sea area. Under the sea surface, several huge black shadows slowly passed by. The sea fish were frightened by the sudden appearance of several huge black shadows and fled in all directions. And above the surface of the sea, a large-scale warship group consisting of 10 large warships. At the moment, it is heading in one direction, at full speed. These are all Marine's excellent warships. And on each battleship, there are nearly 1,000 Marine elites. Among them, there are no less than 10 naval headquarters rear admirals and 5 naval headquarters vice admirals. In addition, one of the 3 admirals from naval headquarters, who is known as the strongest combat power in Marine, will help out. Such a lineup is so powerful and terrifying that it is shocking. Soon after, the huge battleship group can already see the shadow of an island. As the battleship group continued to advance, a non-commissioned officer quickly ran to the bow deck of the ship and reported loudly. Report. The battleship group still has 10 nautical miles to reach the longest range. When the general on the bow deck heard the words, he didn't even turn his head, so he responded in a deep voice. Advance 15 nautical miles, prepare ammunition to load, and fire directly without asking for instructions after reaching the range. This time, no one will be allowed to slip through the net. Yes, the sergeant took the order and retreated. At the same time, located above that island town, in a room on the 2nd floor of the hotel, Zhang Jie and the others raised their heads almost at the same time and looked in one direction. Here we come, Cypher reminded in a cold voice. It's a lot of people. It's about the same as I imagined. Zhang Jie also smiled and said to himself. Erica, who was on the side, was confused when she heard it. What's the matter? Who's here? Your friend. Zhang Jie looked back and smiled. It's Marine, and judging by their posture, they intend to destroy us and the entire island. Let's get out of here while there is still time. Hearing these words, Erica's face became serious. Without too much hesitation, she immediately nodded and stood up. Good. However, she froze as soon as she stood up. Because apart from her, Zhang Jie and his group present did not make any moves. Didn't you say you have to leave quickly? Erica looked puzzled. Zhang Jie also raised his head slightly at this moment. I want you to leave quickly. If it's later, it will be difficult for you to leave. What about you? Erica asked subconsciously, but as soon as she said this, she saw the calm faces of Zhang Jie and the others. Erica suddenly woke up. Isn't the current situation very similar to when we were in the kingdom? The situation at that time seemed so dead, but he resolved it so easily. Thinking of it, Erica couldn't help showing that relieved expression. Well, I see. Then take care, this time. I won't hold you back. Zhang Jie was also slightly taken aback when he heard the words, with a surprised expression on his face. But after a while, he nodded with a smile and reminded. Go south. You can't save other people, it's fundamental to keep yourself alive. Excessive compassion and intolerance let you lose your life. Listening to Zhang Jie's warning, Erica nodded solemnly after thinking for a moment. Well, I'll remember that. Your Highness, take care too. Soon, Erica left the hotel. But Zhang Jie also stood up slowly after Erica left. Then, it's time for us to set off. I think this time, we should be able to fight a little bit. With that said, Zhang Jie walked out the door. Zhang Jie has already clearly sensed that there is a strange and powerful aura in that huge fleet. From the breath alone, Zhang Jie could judge the strength of the opponent. On par with when he met Aokiji at Marine Base. But it was a strange breath. If everything is excluded, then the remaining ones, who are most likely to catch up, are those at the same level as Aokiji. Kizaru, who is also one of the Marine 3 admirals. As for Akainu, Zhang Jie thinks it is unlikely. At the same time, residents in the town. I also saw the huge battleship group sailing here on the distant sea. Seeing such a large-scale fleet, the residents hiding in the houses couldn't help but be speechless. Tisk tisk, so many Marines. Those pirates are about to suffer. What a huge fleet of battleships. What a spectacle. It's the first time I've seen such a spectacle. Hee, those pirates who dared to kill celestial dragons have come to die. Although I heard that hurting celestial dragons will attract Marine Admiral's shot, I didn't expect that the matter would be so big. It's exciting to watch now. Presumably those pirates will be scared stupid after seeing such a large-scale fleet. At this time, the residents of the town are still like outsiders. Look at this incident from the perspective of a bystander. As everyone knows, they themselves are already in the game. In their view, one of them did not harm celestial dragons, and the other did not have anything to do with the pirates who harmed celestial dragons. This matter is a fire, no matter what, it can't burn them. As for Marine Admiral and Marine large forces will come. What does it matter? I am just an ordinary resident, not a pirate or bandit, why should I be afraid? Staring at Zhang Jie and others walking out of the hotel, the residents in the house. They all pointed and whispered at Zhang Jie and others. But Zhang Jie didn't care about it at all. On the other hand, there was obvious displeasure on Hungry Wolf's face. Shout, they didn't know this when they first saw us, and they said they should thank us, but now it's fine, the doors and windows are closed, and they gossip behind their backs, it's really annoying. In the rear, Obito said that he could see it openly, and he smiled and comforted him. Arguing with them about what to do, what they say is just talk, if you are serious, you will be fooled. It was also at this time that the first artillery fire started. Call out, with a sharp whistling sound across the sky. A black cannonball crashed into the town. Boom. Boom. The dazzling flames rose with a huge roar. Immediately afterwards, there was the cannon fire all over the sky, and the loud roaring noise everywhere. Whoa, 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 bang, bang, boom, boom, boom. But in just a few seconds, the town has already risen into a sea of flames. The pungent gunpowder smoke filled the air, the sound of crimson flames, and scorching air waves rushed to the face. Buildings collapsed with the bombardment of shells. Boom, boom, rumbling. At this moment, the residents in the town were all stunned. Panic emotions pervaded the entire town at this moment. Hey, hey, hey. What's going on here? Marine is firing at us. Are they attacking us? Crazy. We are not pirates. The residents in the house looked around in horror. The complexion of the building that either collapsed or was rising in flames was pale. Their pupils shrank sharply, and they couldn't believe that the scene they saw was real. And below, in the ruins of the collapsed building, came the terrified cries of the victims. Ah, come on, help me, my leg is pinned down. Don't go, please don't go, don't leave me, woo woo woo. It is also in the panic and anxiety of the residents. A second round of shelling ensued. Call out, Shua. Boom, boom, boom. The same howling and roaring sound of shells came again. Dozens of dazzling flames rose again in the town, causing several buildings to collapse. Boom. This time, in those buildings that were lucky enough not to be hit by shells, the residents reacted. Marine's first round of shelling was not an accidental bombing. Whether it is pirates or ordinary residents like them, they are all the targets of the Marine warship. Knowing this, the residents of the town immediately exploded, and each of them fled out in panic like ants on a hot pot. Escape. Run away. Marine is trying to kill us too. Wait for me. Why did Marine attack us? So that's how it is. With such a huge fleet, it turns out that we have always wanted to be with Marine from the very beginning. Before waiting for the residents to express their inner fear loudly, the next round of shelling will come again. Boom boom. There was a series of dense roars and flames. At this moment, the residents of the entire town began to flee in a panic. There was only one group of people. No matter before or after the artillery fire came, they remained calm and composed as usual. And they are exactly 8 people: Zhang-Jie, Cypher, Madara, Yueni, Obito, Yiguyuta, Hungry Wolf, and Tiandao Pain. Even facing the cannon fire all over the sky, the 8 of them seemed to be strolling in the courtyard. Walking on the bustling street, completely ignoring the fleeing people around. Tisk, this is really ruthless. The residents of the whole town kill as soon as they say. Hungry Wolf looked at the fleeing people around him, and said, already in the burning building. Obito also said something leisurely. I can't tell whether they are pirates or we are pirates. This kind of behavior is not justice. Zhang-Jie, who knows Buster Call, doesn't care about it. Extreme justice, or is it for selfish desires? In order to cover up certain things, the entire island will disappear from this world. This has nothing to do with justice, right? Yi Ji Yu Yutai asked with his head. Zhang-Jie smiled. Aren't we here? It's still on the edge. By the way, those 3 guys are still buying supplies. Obito, you should go there. At least, the navigator can't die yet. Obito looked up at Zhang-Jie upon hearing the sound. What about the other one? Zhang-Jie subconsciously glanced at the sea of flames around him, then smiled. If you meet one, then bring it with you. Understood. In response, Obito immediately left the team and rushed in the direction of Ling. Glancing at Obito who had left, Zhang-Jie looked again at the direction of the Marine battleship group. Let's go. Let's also go to greet the guests who gave us a big gift, just return a gift. In the Marine battleship group. On the battleship, Admiral of Headquarters Kizaru was wearing yellow and white striped clothes and a marine coat. Suddenly aware of it at this moment, he raised his head and looked in the direction of the island. Immediately afterwards, he saw Zhang-Jie leading 6 people to the shore. Also at the same time, Zhang-Jie and Kizaru are far away from each other. And Kizaru also stood up slowly at this moment. The main culprit is here. This momentum is really scary. Kizaru had a lazy face, and he spoke scary words, but the movements in his hands were unambiguous at all. He slowly raised his hand and pointed his fingertips at Zhang-Jie who was the leader. Om, echoed with a soft chime. Dazzling golden light shone sharply at Kizaru's fingertips, and powerful and terrifying power gathered at his fingertips. In the next second, there was only an ear-piercing buzzing sound of clang. The group of golden flashes gathered at Kizaru's fingertips shot out toward Zhang-Jie on the coast in a sharp response. Shua, the golden ball of light half the size of a fist dragged a long stream of light across it. Almost in the blink of an eye. You have come to the coast, within 100 meters of where Zhang Jie is. But even though the golden light was right in front of his eyes, Zhang Jie didn't panic about it at all. It is also in this moment of effort. A man dressed in white, with a long silver knife hanging from his waist, and a pair of emerald green eyes appeared in front of Zhang Jie in an instant. Standing in the middle of Zhang Jie and Jin Guang. And he is also Cypher. Facing the golden flash that came from him, Cypher's face was as cold as usual. He raised his right hand and grabbed it lightly. Boom, boom, a loud crash echoed. Cypher blocked the golden flash with one hand, and the expression on his face remained unchanged. The powerful power of the golden flash directly set off a huge gust of wind. The clothes of Cypher and others were blown and made a sound. Rumble. The golden flash that contained great power was caught in Cypher's hands just like that, unable to push forward, let alone break free. And Cypher's figure didn't move even an iota. He looked down at the golden flash in his hand. Cypher shook his right hand vigorously. Boom, boom. The golden flash was crushed by Cypher on the spot, turning into a burst of golden light and completely dissipating. The gust of wind also stopped a moment after the golden light dissipated. Cypher slowly withdrew his hand. He looked at Kizaru on the battleship calmly and indifferently. And on the battleship, Kizaru was stunned. He stared wide-eyed, staring fixedly at Cypher on the coast, with an expression of disbelief. Hey, are you kidding me? Squeeze the flash with bare hands. Where did such a terrible monster come from? Different from the previous lazy tone, this time, Kizaru was really frightened. Same moment, Madara, who was behind Zhang Jie, also stood up slowly. So now, is it time for us to return the gift? As soon as Madara finished speaking, a powerful and terrifying aura rushed out of him. Boom, a blue ray of light emerged from Madara's body. Then the skeleton condensed, and was covered by a layer of blue material while extending upward. Shua Shi Li Hao Hao. But in just a short moment, a light blue half-body titan with a height of tens of feet, with 2 faces and 4 arms, came into everyone's eyes. The Marines on top of the battleship group saw it clearly. Feeling the extremely oppressive and terrifying atmosphere, the pupils of all the Marines shrank uncontrollably and sharply. This figure is too big, isn't it? Then, what is that? Titan. A half-body titan with 2 faces and 4 arms. Am I dreaming? Such a big guy just appeared out of nowhere. When the Marines on the battleship group were astonished, Madara spoke again leisurely. Come on, let me see you, how many caddies are there? While speaking, he raised his hands to make seals. The huge light blue half-body titan also raised all 4 arms at this moment, forming a seal-like ring. As the printing was completed, Madara's deep voice came out again. Tengai Shinsei. Boom. A deafening buzzing sound came from above the sky. Battleships above the sea. All the Marines raised their heads at this moment and looked towards the sky. What is this sound? Looks like something is coming down. While speaking, a black shadow suddenly appeared on the white clouds in the sky. In the next second, there was only a buzz. The clouds in the sky were pierced steeply by a huge meteorite. Rumble. The sound produced by the falling meteorite became louder and deafening at this moment. Soon, the entire battleship group on the sea was enveloped by the huge black shadow of the meteorite. Facing this scene, Rao is Kizaru, who is the admiral of headquarters. At this moment, she couldn't help but shrink her pupils slightly, and said with a serious face. Hey, however, did you attract such a huge meteorite? This battle, it seems that it will not be easy. It's just the part where the meteorite pierces through the clouds and catches everyone's eyes. Its huge area is enough to sink these 10 battleships at the same time, and the battleships can't even run away. Soon, the shadow of a huge meteorite. It covered the entire sea area around the battleship group. Haibing raised their heads blankly, looking at the huge meteorite falling slowly. All of them showed despairing expressions on their faces without exception. Dangling. The crisp sound of weapons falling to the ground echoed. The Marines each spoke with despair on their faces. Hey, he, how can we stop this kind of thing? Even the entire battleship group is shrouded in the shadow of the meteorite, how can they escape? Even if this is not the sea, with such a large area covered, it's too late to run. Are you kidding? The battle has only just begun. and the marine side has already been collectively attracted by Madara's meteorites, and they are forced into despair. Fortunately, the chief officer of the battleship was not disturbed by the desperation oppressed by this scene. After all, there's still Admiral here. Soon, Vice Admiral stood up and loudly encouraged the morale. Cheer me up. Isn't it just a stone? Look at your appearance, can you still be called an elite? Perhaps the enemy's strength is indeed so strong that it makes you despair. But don't forget, we have Admiral in charge. As Vice Admiral's shouts echoed above the battleship, the Marines' despair eased somewhat. Yes, we have Admiral sitting here. It can be done with Admiral. Marines' morale turned around. Kizaru, who was on a battleship looking up at the huge meteorite falling from the sky, also moved at this moment. Golden flashes shone from his body. That dazzling golden light illuminated the place shrouded in the shadow of the meteorite. In the next second, he made a steep leap, turned into a golden streamer, and galloped towards the huge meteorite in the sky. Call out. The ear-piercing whistling sound resounded through the entire sea area. Kizaru's aura also became stronger and stronger as his height climbed, and the light became more dazzling and dazzling. Clang! With a huge cross flash suddenly appeared. At the same time, the falling meteorite also suffered a powerful blow from Huang Yuan's full strength. Boom! Boom! The loud roaring explosion echoed in the sky, and the extremely huge meteorite exploded in response. Boom! The golden flash and the crimson fire reflected half of the sky, making the heaven and the earth pale. The terrifying residual power turned into a wave of air visible to the naked eye. The coerced heat swept across all directions. Boom! Boom! The clouds in the sky were dispersed by the air waves in an instant. CCFI. Under the sky, the wind is blowing and the waves are churning. Even the huge battleship was violently turbulent under the beating of the raging waves. Rumble. However, Kizaru's attack did not end there. Although the huge meteorite has been broken by him. But this is not enough, the remaining meteorites are still huge. If it is allowed to fall like this, the entire fleet of battleships will still be doomed. At that time, all warships will be reduced to dregs. Hovering in midair, Kizaru crossed his arms, urging his own fruit ability with all his strength. Immediately afterwards, a golden light shone from his hand again. 8-foot Chong Guyu. Shish, 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 shish. With Kizaru's low shout echoed. Countless light bullets containing powerful power shot towards the fallen meteorite like raindrops. Boom, 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 boom. On the warship, Marine non-commissioned officers at all levels are also holding their weapons tightly at this time. He faced the countless meteorites of different sizes that were falling rapidly towards them. Coming soon. Shoot them down. The crimson light glowing from the surface of the meteorite block made the sea surface and the battleship red. Nearly 10,000 Marines on 10 warships. At this moment, it launched a fierce offensive against the countless meteorites. Drink. Block these meteorite blocks. If the battleship is destroyed, the ending we face will only be the same as the battleship. However, the reality is cruel. Even if there are nearly 1,000 Marines on each battleship. But in the face of the dense meteorite rain, they are still all unable to resist. Bang, 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 win, piss, do it all. Boom. But in the blink of an eye, 2 warships were smashed into sieves by the meteorite and exploded on the spot, shooting out dazzling flames on the sea. Boom. The powerful meteorite fell to the sea surface, and the surrounding warships were swayed by the waves it raised. Soon, a meteorite broke through the defenses of the Marines and landed on the battleship. Boom. Ah! The surrounding Marines were directly blown away by the aftermath of the impact, and the screams and wailings echoed one after another on the battleships on the sea. Soon, the 3rd battleship and the 4th battleship exploded one after another. After a while, the 5th exploded again. Then came the 6th, the 7th. In less than a minute, the number of Marine casualties has reached more than 7,000. Their lives were all taken away by the dense meteorite rain in an instant. The coast, where Zhang Jie et al. Looking at the huge meteorite being broken by Kizaru, it turned into countless small meteorites and fell to the sea. The corners of Madara's mouth also slowly rose, revealing a faint smile. Block it, then, let's forget about the next one. Zhang Jie suddenly picked up Madara's words. At the same time, he looked sideways at Madara and said, the next one will not be them, but ourselves. This made Madara, who was about to attract a meteorite, stunned by the sudden words. However, Madara didn't bother with that either. Really, that would be a pity. If Madara is attracting a second meteorite, then Marine's side will die 100% except for Kizaru. Because they just can't stop it. If they can still defeat the first meteorite, it would be fine if they smashed the second meteorite. If there is no way to break it, when such a large meteorite falls, it will definitely set off a stormy sea. Then the whole town, and even the whole island at the foot of Zhangje, they would all be instantly engulfed by the huge waves stirred up by the meteorite. Now that more than half of the marine warships have been lost, and more than half of them have been killed or injured, the meaning and value of the second meteorite have been greatly reduced. Although the meteorite hit Marine, but at the same time, his own side will also be greatly affected. And this is also the reason why Zhangje stopped the second meteorite that Madara summoned. At the same time, on the surface battleship, even Marine, who survived by chance, is now injured all over. Looking at the large army of nearly 10,000 people just now, there are only 1,000 disabled people left. Looking at the 10 magnificent battleships just now, there are only 3 left now, and all of them have become dilapidated under the impact of meteorite rain. The Marines suddenly fell into boundless despair. When, thump, the weapon fell to the ground again, and even Marine herself knelt down on the ground limply at this time. Looking at the tragic situation, he thought about his companion who had already lost more than half of his casualties in just a moment. Even the burly muscular man couldn't help but roared unwillingly with tears in his eyes at this moment. This must be a lie, right? Is it my dream? Is it a dream? Tears welled up in my eyes. The fighting spirit and will of the Marines were completely disintegrated at this moment, and they choked up their speech. The battle has just started, and the casualties are already so heavy, so how should we pay for the next battle? This kind of power is no longer something we can resist. It's just a random blow, and the fleet has already suffered such heavy losses. This kind of terrifying power, they are not at the same level as us at all. It was also amid the desperate whispers of the Marines. Kizaru's figure also fell from that midair. Clatter. It landed on the warship smoothly. Looking at the wreckage and corpses floating on the sea around. Looking at the Marines who were seriously injured and survived by chance, and the 3 battleships that were seriously damaged, Kizaru fell silent. Let's retreat. Their strength has exceeded the range you can capture and kill. Even if they stay here to fight, they will only cause unnecessary casualties. Kizaru looked at the Marines and said leisurely. Hearing Kizaru's voice, all the Marines raised their heads, looked at Kizaru with red eyes and shouted. Kizaru Admiral. Kizaru turned his head away. What a shame. As Admiral, he couldn't even block this kind of attack, and caused such heavy casualties. Turning around, Kizaru faced Zhangje and his group on the coast of the town. At the same time, he gave the order to the Marines in the rear again. Let's withdraw. The next battle is beyond your reach. Same moment, Zhangje, who was looking at Kizaru on the distant battleship, also showed a smile. Cypher, who was beside Zhangje, also walked out slowly at this moment. I'll be back soon. After saying that, Cypher's figure instantly disappeared in place. Whoosh. At the first occurrence, it was in front of the battleship group, obliquely above Kizaru. Looking at the Cypher who came in a flash, hovered in the air, and looked down at the audience indifferently, Kizaru joked leisurely. Really, are your auras so terrifying? Raising his hands, Kizaru's golden glow appeared in his hands. Amazon Cloud Sword. Clang. A golden lightsaber unfolds as Kizaru's hands stretch. Cypher glanced at the lightsaber in Kizaru's hand. Then looking at Kizaru, Yo-Yo said, "Do you feel fear?" Humanity. Hearing Cypher's sudden words, Kizaru was slightly taken aback, and asked back, "What?" Cypher looked indifferent, and looked down at Kizaru with a cold tone. "Are you afraid?" Kizaru smiled. "Sorry, I don't understand these strange words." Hearing this, Cypher doesn't want to talk too much. With both hands slowly withdrawn, Cypher grabbed the scabbard at his waist with one hand and the handle at his waist with the other. Clang, accompanied by this crisp blade unsheathing sound echoed. The black-winged monster around Cypher's waist was unsheathed half an inch steeply. Clang buzz. A majestic and terrifying aura also rushed out of Cypher. Boom. And this, since he came to this world, was the first time he drew his knife out of its sheath. Feeling the sudden surge of breath from Cypher, Kizaru's pupils shrank suddenly. There was also an unbelievable shock on his face. Hey, isn't it? Without too much hesitation. The moment Cypher drew out the black-winged demon, he directly attacked Kizaru. Shua! The black-winged demon broke through the air attack and slashed. Seeing this, Kizaru didn't dare to be careless in the slightest, and held Amakongan's sword to meet him with a single blow. Clang! Boom! The two blades collided fiercely, and there was a huge roar. The converging terrifying forces stirred up a terrifying aftermath, turning into waves of air and ripples sweeping all directions. Boom! The surface of the sea directly below the two of them exploded with a burst of waves several meters high. Boom! Kizaru stalemate with Cypher for a while. Then decisively took advantage of the situation and flew backwards to release the force, and at the same time raised his hand to point Cypher in the air, and the light from the fingertips burst out. Om! Call out! A ray of golden light dragged the constant streamer and shot towards Cypher head-on. Cypher looked up, waved at the flash that was flying towards him, and knocked it away with his bare hands. Boom! Boom! The flash was hit and changed direction, falling into the sea causing a powerful explosion. But Cypher dodged and flew backwards. Kizaru chased after him. Woo 6. Kizaru, who flew upside down, watched as Cypher staged another attack that knocked him flying with his bare hands. At the same time, he was galloping towards him. Kizaru couldn't help whispering. Is it like this again? Shooting the flashing light with bare hands, still in such a relaxed posture. Really, Yata mirror. During the words, the golden light in Kizaru's hand flourished, and a beam of light shot out. Immediately afterwards, his whole body turned into countless light spots. Following the light beams reflected on the sea surface, he moved rapidly and instantly distanced himself from Cypher. Shua! Cypher, who was galloping towards him, saw this, his eyes drooped slightly, and the black-winged demon clenched tightly in his hand. In the next moment, the ringing and turning suddenly unfolded. Whoosh! On the other side, Kizaru made a quick transition with Yata Mirror's beam. A battleship fragment standing on a sea surface stood still. Clatter! 8:30, but just as he stood still, Yinfa's figure instantly came behind him. Boom! Facing this sudden scene, Kizaru was shocked, and looked sideways into Cypher's eyes. Just unbelievable horror, isn't it? This guy, caught up to the speed of light. It was also when Kizaru was terrified. Cypher, who had already rushed to his side, did not hesitate at all, and slashed at him with a single blow from the black-winged demon. Brush! Clang! Kizaru's instinct told him that this knife must be avoided. Complying with this intuition and moving his heart, Kizaru's whole body shone with a golden light. The moment before Cypher's black-winged demon slashed down, it turned into countless light spots and scattered, flying towards the sky. Shish! 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 Following Kizaru's dodge, followed by that huge roaring sound. Boom! Boom! Although Cypher's blow missed, it was still powerful. It failed to land on Kizaru, but landed on the surface of the sea. All of a sudden, a huge wave with a height of tens of meters exploded on the surface of the sea. Wow! The aroused sea water fell in accordance with the gravitational force, like a sudden rainstorm. Cypher was in the rainstorm, looking up into the midair. Just about to chase up. Kizaru's figure had already gathered in midair, and activated his fruit ability again. His hands burst into dazzling golden flashes. 8-foot Chong Guyu. Boom! Swish! 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 Shish! In an instant, the sky was covered with golden flashes for half a day. Countless light bullets, like a meteor rainstorm, shot down towards Cypher. Knock! Seeing this, Cypher clenched the black-winged demon in his hands, raised a slash and slashed down. Shua! Boom! The sea surface under the blade exploded directly, stirring up two huge waves as high as tens of meters. Then, just for a moment, the light bullets shot obliquely towards Cypher in midair, and at this moment they all fell vertically into the sea. Whoosh whoosh! Boom! Boom! There was another loud bang. The sea surface in front of Cypher seemed to be opened by someone, and the waves exploded the whole piece. Kizaru, who was in the midair, watched his all-out attack being so easily resolved by the opponent. The face can't hide it anymore, revealing the horrified body. This guy, what's going on? He fell asleep before being attacked. Fighting the pirates. Since when are there more powerful people like this in this sea? It was also during the sudden change of Kizaru's thoughts. Suddenly there was an ear-piercing buzzing sound. Shoo! Immediately afterwards, the waves that were stirred up by the whole piece and that had not yet settled. It was directly chopped off by Cypher. Clang! The figure attacked Kizaru again. Cypher raised the black-winged monster and slashed at Kizaru. Although Kizaru was shocked by Cypher's strength, but he didn't flinch, and he also chopped off with the Wu-Wei sword. Shua! Boom! The two weapons collided, and there was another loud roar. Boom! 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 The terrifying aftermath swept all directions. For a while, Kizaru and Cypher became deadlocked. Seeing this scene, Kizaru also laughed and joked. It's so dangerous, I almost failed to block it. Brother, it's just that Kizaru hasn't finished speaking yet. Cypher raised his other hand abruptly, and pointed his fingertips at Kizaru. Accompanied by a soft sound echoed. Cypher's fingertips shone with emerald green light, and powerful and terrifying forces were frantically gathering. Not good. Feeling that terrifying power, Kizaru's pupils are playing, and there is something wrong in his heart. Immediately afterwards, I saw that he started elementalization without the slightest hesitation, turning into countless flashes and scattering in all directions. Shoo! Also at the same instant, the sudden spurt out from Cypher's fingers. Sero! Boom! A pillar of emerald green light with a diameter of about 2 meters long traverses the boundless sea. The terrifying breath shocked the fish and beasts in the deep sea to flee in all directions. That powerful flash of light shone so that the sky and the earth were overshadowed by it. Boom! In the distance, a white mushroom cloud rises. Followed by that huge explosion. Boom boom boom. On one side of the surface battleship, the Japanese Marines watched the battle between Cypher and Kizaru. All of them opened their mouths in shock, their faces full of disbelief. Hey, is this serious? Kizaru Admiral, you are at a disadvantage. That guy's strength is actually comparable to Admiral's. This guy doesn't seem to be the boss of that group. I know the target of this crusade. The captain of the pirate group is a guy named Zhang Jie. It's not him, and he doesn't seem to appear on the wanted list. As soon as these words came out, the Marines around them all widened their eyes with horror on their faces. This group of guys are, what is the origin? The strength is comparable to Admiral, such a powerful guy, but he is not the boss of that group. Even Kizaru was moved when he saw the huge white mushroom cloud rising in the distance. However, there was no fear on his face. Instead, he still looked at Cypher with some incongruity and said leisurely. It's so dangerous. It was really dangerous just now. If I was hit by that blow, I'm afraid I would be in danger, right? You guy, you are really scary strong. Cypher looked at Kizaru, his face was still cold. Although Cypher has the upper hand in the current battle situation, Kizaru's strength is not weak after all. It is still a bit difficult to cause fatal damage or serious injury to Kizaru in a short time. And if Kizaru keeps avoiding direct combat with Cypher, it will be difficult for Cypher to deal effective damage unless. With his eyes narrowed, Cypher slightly raised his hand holding the black-winged demon. Seeing this, Kizaru, who was still in a daze, immediately became vigilant. Are you coming? It's just that Cypher didn't attack him right away, something different from what he had imagined. Instead, he looked down at him coldly, and said in a cold voice. Don't waver. Put up your posture, tense your nerves, and don't relax even for a moment. Otherwise, what greets you at that moment will be death. The black-winged demon in his hand was fully raised, and the tip of the knife was pointed at Kizaru. Cypher spoke again. Lock it, black-winged demon. Boom. As soon as Cypher finished speaking, a terrifying black-green aura so thick that it was clearly visible to the naked eye suddenly rushed out of him. A powerful coercion enveloped the quartet. At this moment, the sun and the sky seemed to be shot down and fell into darkness. Facing this sudden scene, Kizaru felt uneasy. Feeling the oppressive feeling that makes people feel as if they are about to suffocate, they are even more shocked. On the battleship, those Marines have not been able to react to what happened. They all fell straight to the ground. Plop, plop. A burst of dark green raindrops fell from the sky steeply. Crash. The raindrops spend a lot of time, and it takes only a short time. When the raindrops stopped, the surroundings returned to the previous light again. But Kizaru's heart fell into boundless darkness at this moment. Isn't it a lie? What is this? Ability user. Zone. Phantasmal beast. Looking at the new figure of Cypher in the midair, Kizaru's body and mind were full of horror. It seems that even the deep soul has a strong fear of the figure in front of him. Cypher at this time. He wears a double-horned helmet on his head, and a white jumpsuit with huge black wings on his back. The black-winged demon in his hand has disappeared. But at this moment, the aura of deterrence he exudes is stronger than when he is holding a knife. It was also at this moment of lightning and flint. A sudden move by Cypher's right hand. Shish! An emerald green moonlight sword suddenly appeared in his palm, and he held it in his hand. Then there was just a whoosh. Cypher's figure instantly disappeared in place. Appearing again, Yi Shi came to Kizaru's body and slashed down with a sword without hesitation. Shoo! Just a face-to-face. Let alone counterattack. Before Kizaru even had time to defend, Cypher held the moonlight sword and slashed from shoulder to waist with a sword. At this moment, Kizaru was startled. His face was full of shock that couldn't be concealed. How can this be? Have my reflexes slowed down? No, it's his speed that got faster. Shish. Boom. The booming sound exploded. A wave of more than 10 meters high exploded on the surface of the sea again. In the next second, there was another bang. What was stirred up was also caught by the cave minister for the falling waves. A golden light beam shot out and flew towards the distance. Behind the waves, Cypher, with black wings on his back, held a moonlight sword and stared coldly at Kizaru, who was fleeing. In the next moment, he suddenly took a step forward, throwing the moonlight sword in his hand towards Kizaru viciously. Shua! Emerald green light shines out. Feeling a strong sense of crisis, Kizaru activated his ability again. Yada mirror. Boom! There was another loud roar. A white mushroom cloud rose again. Kizaru's figure was barely out of the range of the moonlight sword, before he could breathe a sigh of relief. A black shadow came in an instant. Kizaru's heart tightened. He didn't have the slightest intention of fighting, and distanced himself from Cypher again. But in an instant, Cypher's figure stopped in front of Kizaru, who wanted to distance himself from him again. With a move of the right hand, emerald green light is revealed. The moonlight sword was condensed into the palm of Cypher again, and the sword slashed towards Kizaru. Seeing that there was no way to avoid it, Kizaru had no choice but to condense the Amazono sword, and met Cypher's slash with one sword. Shua! Boom! As a result, Kizaru's figure flew upside down. The hand holding the sword was numb from the shock. This guy, does he retain his strength from the beginning? What is the origin of this warring pirate group? Any random crew member has such terrifying strength. This picture with black wings on its back and a horned helmet on its head, really fits the words, monster. Feeling the powerful strength of Cypher, Kizaru was more and more surprised. His complexion also became ugly. It seems that if I don't make it right this time, I'm really going to die here. Boom! In just a few thought ups and downs, Cypher has already killed again. Kizaru had no choice but to bite the bullet and retreat while fighting with Cypher. And the other side, above the sea where Zhang-Jie and others are. Seeing the figures of Kizaru and Cypher disappearing from sight, Otoko Yuta, who came back to his senses, couldn't help sighing. Is this the real strength of Mr. Cypher? Really powerful. Hungry Wolf stroked his chin, thoughtfully. I calculated that he was very strong before, but I still underestimated him. That's when the crew were talking about Cypher's strength. The system's notification sound echoed in Zhang-Jie's mind again. Ding! Congratulations to host for getting plus 36,000 combat value. Hearing the system's notification tone, and the fact that the rewards for this campaign were 36,000, Zhang-Jie was also a little surprised. But after pondering for a while, he settled down. After all, what was destroyed this time was an entire fleet of battleships, and the reward of 36,000 battle points cannot be said to be too much at all. After careful consideration, Zhang-Jie even felt that the system was lacking. However, it is still passable. After getting the combat value, Zhang-Jie didn't have any hesitation, and went directly to the lottery page to draw the lottery. Ding! Battle value minus 12,800. Ding! Congratulations to host for summoning the warrior from Fate World Medusa. Rider. Hearing the system's notification tone, a figure of a woman appeared in Zhang Jie's mind. It was a woman with long purple hair wearing a blindfold. People gave her the nickname, Sister R. This is a woman with full agility and strong strength at the same time. Before Zhang Jie's thoughts could be extended, Zhang Jie suddenly discovered an even bigger surprise. That is the amount of the lottery, fixed at 12,800 points. After this lottery draw, the amount required for the lottery draw has not doubled as before. This made Zhang Jie overjoyed, and pressed the draw again. Ding. Battle value minus 12,800. Ding. Congratulations to host for summoning the ship, Death Song, sailing on the Nether River. Ding. The item obtained this time is special, please host to the designated place and wait for a while. Vessel. Zhang Jie raised his head suddenly, and subconsciously looked at the sea on one side. After drawing so many prizes, this is the first time he has won an item, but it is still a ship. This is exactly what he needs. Although he already has a ship now, this ship is still a lot worse after all. But if there are ships provided by the system, then all this will be different. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on Zhang Jie's face, and he checked his attribute panel. Host. Zhang Jie. Battle value. 10,400. Item. Death Song. Conqueror. Obito Yuta, Uchiha Obito, Hungry Wolf, Pain Tiandao. Jiguo Yuan Yi, Ulquiorra Cipher, Uchiha Madara, Medusa. Lottery entrance close double angle bracket close double angle bracket. Withdrawing his thoughts, Zhang Jie turned around and looked towards the shadow, guiding his direction. Is it over there? Whispering softly, Zhang Jie was about to step forward to the waiting place. The space not far from him suddenly distorted. Immediately afterwards, Obito's figure fell out of the twisted center, along with Lucchini, Augustus, and Jero. Flop, flop, clatter. I didn't meet those two little guys. Obito, who stood still, looked at Zhang Jie and said calmly. Hearing this, Zhang Jie couldn't help raising his eyes to look at the town that had already been engulfed in flames. Lowering his head, Zhang Jie glanced at the three handymen who were kneeling on the ground panting. They, who don't have space transfer in their common sense, must have been quite frightened by this encounter. But Zhang Jie didn't care too much. If you haven't met, you haven't met. After speaking, Zhang Jie walked out in the direction of the guidance point. His sudden action made both Hungry Wolf and Yijiu Yutai startled. Huh, are you leaving now? Don't we need to wait for Mr. Cipher? Zhang Jie responded indifferently without turning his head. He'll be back soon, no need to wait. Hearing this, all the crew members also looked at each other in blank dismay, followed Zhang Jie's pace and left. At the same time, Marineford, Naval Headquarters, Marshal's office. Da da da. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed outside the corridor of the room. This untimely movement made Sengoku, who was discussing impel down matters with several officers in the office, frown slightly. Soon, a Marine non-commissioned officer ran to the door of the office panting and shouted. Report, report. Sengoku raised his head, his tone thick. What's up? The Marine non-commissioned officer who came to report had a terrified face, with cold sweat dripping from his forehead. Zheng dispatched to slaughter the warships of the expedition pirate group. All lost contact. As soon as the sergeant's news came out, suddenly, like a blockbuster, it exploded in the marshal's office. Almost at the same moment, all the Marine officers in the office, including Marshal Sengoku, all stared wide-eyed. The pupils shrank uncontrollably and sharply. Sengoku, who has always been calm, stood up suddenly in a gaffe, and exclaimed in surprise. What did you say? The non-commissioned officer who reported swallowed hard, and repeated it again. The warships that were dispatched to slaughter the pirate gang, just arrived at the destination, and all of a sudden lost contact. What? Even with a little mental preparation after hearing it for the first time. But after getting the positive news, Sengoku still showed that stunned and shocked body. The officers on one side also heard the news. At this moment, everyone showed horror. This is the first time they have heard such appalling news since they rushed into the Marine battleship group, collectively lost contact. Eradicated. Are you kidding me? That's a fleet of nearly 10,000 Marine elites, with 10 top-level warships. Okay, how could it be wiped out? If I remember correctly, Kizaru Admiral seems to be one of them this time too. When Sengoku heard Kizaru's name, his ups and downs calmed down a little. Yes, Pelusolino is still up there. Where is he? Where is the other? When the reporting sergeant heard the words, the expression on his face became even uglier. Beads of sweat rolled down his cheeks. Kazaru Admiral, he has not been able to contact him so far. So we don't know where the others are either. At this moment, all the officers in the audience took a sharp breath, revealing that expression of boundless shock. Hiss, even Kazaru Admiral lost contact. How can this be? Chapter 71. Where Zhang-Jie et al. That is now a town in flames. Two ashen-faced little girls were walking together on the street surrounded by scorching atmosphere. The older little girl sitting in the front was carrying a bulging bag. And behind her, the younger little girl followed her obediently. If Zhang-Jie and the others were here, they would definitely be able to recognize these two at a glance. They are also Fina and Mona, who left the team after landing on the island. Sister Fina, you are bleeding. From behind, Mengna's weak voice came. However, Fina did not stop her pace, but continued to move forward with that bulging bag on her back. It's okay. Mengna is holding on for a while, we will be there soon. Mengna nodded like a chicken pecking rice. Okay, Mengna is not tired at all, Mengna still has strength. At this time, although blood was flowing down Fina's forehead, she herself didn't care at all. For the sudden destruction of this new home in front of her, she didn't feel any sadness. On the contrary, at this time, her face was still filled with joy that could not be concealed. The destruction of the town is the best proof that it cannot survive here. And this will give her a chance to return to the pirates. Of course, this is also a probabilistic matter. Because there is the possibility of being rejected, and there is also the possibility that the battle pirate group has left. But this does not hinder her hope and expectation for returning to fight against the pirates. As long as they still meet, Fina believes that there is still a great possibility of boarding the ship again. As for staying for a long time, although there is little hope. But it is not without chance. Will the captain take us in? Mona couldn't help asking again on the way. Fina still maintained this smile, and responded gently. Yes, didn't Mona say that too? The captain is a good man, he will take us in. So, we have to catch up with them before they leave, or we'll miss it. The two walked along the street. The fiery breath scorched them, making them feel dehydrated, and even fainted on the ground several times. But the two of them still held on with perseverance and did not fall down, and they did not stop moving forward at all. I don't know how long I walked. In their line of sight, the endless blue sea appeared in their line of sight together with the sea, CCFA. There is also a group of people on the shore, waiting for something. It seems to have noticed the arrival of two little girls. The leader of that group was a young man named Zhang-Jie. At this time, he slowly turned his head and looked towards the rear. The others, after Zhang-Jie looked back, all turned their heads to look back. Is it them? Luxini shouted in surprise when she saw Fina and Mengna. Rao Zhang-Jie felt a little surprised when he saw the figures of Fei Na and Meng Na. I thought they were already dead in the artillery fire. So, he's still alive. On the other side, there are two people named Fei Na in that street. After seeing Zhang-Jie's figure, he couldn't believe his eyes and rubbed his eyes desperately. After confirming that the person standing in front is Zhang-Jie and others, Fina's face immediately revealed an expression of surprise that had never been seen before. Boss Captain, carrying a bulging bag, Fina shouted. At the same time, he did not forget to say hello to Mona, and quickened his pace. Soon, Fei Na and Meng Na came to Zhang-Jie and the others. Zhang-Jie narrowed his eyes slightly, glanced at Fei Na and Meng Na and reiterated. I've said it more than once, don't give me these weird nicknames casually, and don't shout nonsense. Fina grinned, but didn't care about Zhang-Jie's reiteration. Put down the big bag on your back. Fina took out a fiery red apple from inside and wiped it on the surface of her clothes. In the end, it seemed that the surface of my clothes was a little dirty. Then she turned the clothes over and wiped the clean inside. Then he raised his hand and handed it to Zhang-Jie. Captain, do you want an apple? It's sweet and delicious. Zhang-Jie lowered his eyes and looked at the apple in Fina's hand, but he didn't take it. Instead, he looked up at Fina and said, Are you trying to impress me with an apple? If you have anything to say, just say it. Fina smiled awkwardly. Before Fina could say anything, Mengna, who was behind her, came out. He took out a candy from his pocket, tiptoed and handed it to Zhang Jie, shouting with difficulty. "Captain Boss, eat candy." Zhang Jie glanced sideways at Meng Na, but didn't say anything, and didn't take the candy from her hand. At this moment, Fina could only speak honestly. "Hey, Captain, look, this town has been destroyed in this way, we will definitely not be able to survive here. How about you are taking us a ride to the next place to disembark?" Hearing this, Zhang Jie looked at Fina with a playful smile and asked back. "Do you think I will promise you?" I heard Zhang Jie's playful tone. Behind, Lucchini couldn't help sighing softly in her heart. Well, it seems, the two of them are destined to stay here and be with this fiery sea of fire. The atmosphere is a bit cold. The smile on Fina's face also froze after hearing Zhang Jie's words. His head drooped slightly unconsciously. Fina was silent for a moment, readjusted her emotions, and answered Zhang Jie's question positively with a smile on her face. "You'll say yes. I really want to say that, but now, I know. Boss Captain, you actually don't want to take on the burden that the two of us can't give you any help." Zhang Jie raised his head slightly, his smile still playful. "Since you know, why are you still coming to touch my bad luck?" With the smile still on Fina's face, she slowly opened her mouth and said. "You are actually very kind and kind. You are willing to take in two strangers and lend a helping hand to two strangers. I am very grateful to you, Captain and Boss. I shouldn't have pushed forward. I should have stopped causing you trouble after I got your help. I should have taken Mengna away and lived here. It's just that although I know what to do, I can't do it. Even if my behavior may make you feel bad, Captain, I still want to fight to get on your ship, or even stay on your ship. I have experienced warmth and joy, but I can't bear the dark and damp streets and alleys, and I can't bear the days of being hungry for 9 meals in 3 days, even if I try my best, I can't survive." Turning her head sideways, Fina looked at the town that was still burning with fire. In fact, after the fire is over, if she stays here, she can survive for a while. It's just that this day will be harder and crueler, and he won't live long. It was also when Fina's thoughts were flying. She suddenly felt her raised right hand lighten. This sudden turn of events made her startled, and raised her head resignedly. But he saw that the apple he raised in his hand had fallen into Zhang Jie's hand at some point. "Boss Captain," she murmured, as if, wanted to say something. But Zhang Jie also happened to speak at this moment. "An answer I didn't expect. I thought that you would make a fool of yourself to win my sympathy for children." Hearing Zhang Jie's words, Fina also smiled a little embarrassedly. "Hey, how can it be? How can you make it difficult for you, the captain?" Zhang Jie raised his head and asked rhetorically. "Then do you think it's difficult for me to do now?" Fina blinked and said something tentatively. "Why don't you, Captain, take a ride with us?" There was a faint smile on Zhang Jie's face. "I am not a good person, I can even be said to be a vicious villain. What I believe in is the supremacy of interests, what I believe in follows my heart, and what I believe in follows. Killing and throwing away corpses is also good for a pirate like me. Although you are of no value to me, I am in a good mood today, so I might as well give you a lift." As he spoke, Zhang Jie put the apple in his hand into his mouth and took a bite. Crack! When Fei Na and Meng Na saw this, they were both stunned for a moment, some couldn't believe what they heard. But soon, they also reacted, their eyes widened, and bright starlight shone in their eyes. "Thanks. Thank you, Captain." The faces of the two little girls were filled with smiles from the bottom of their hearts. I quickly expressed my thanks to Zhang Jie. They have been suffering all the time, and they always cherish the beautiful things. This is especially true for the happiness that seems hard to come by. They didn't even notice it themselves. The sockets of my eyes, already blushing unknowingly in that thank you. In the rear, Lucchini and other 3 handymen. At this moment, his eyes widened. But different from the 2 of Fina Mengna, the 3 of them had an unbelievably shocked look in their eyes. "No, isn't it? Did I hear you right?" The captain actually agreed. The eyes trembled violently, uncontrollably. The scene in front of them was unimaginable even in their dreams. Based on what they experienced and what they saw, the probability of Zhang Jie, who is not happy, Killing them both is greater than the probability of letting them leave alive. But right now, Zhang Jie not only didn't kill these two aggressive girls. He even took them in and is willing to give them a ride. I must be dreaming, right? The three of them looked at Zhang Jie's back, looked at the smiles on the faces of Fei Na and Meng Na and murmured absently. Also at this time, Fina brought up the bag full of apples again, looked at Zhang Jie and asked. Boss Captain, what about these apples? Zhang Jie glanced at it and responded calmly. Divide it to everyone. Okay, Fina replied with a smile, and ran to the back with the bag of apples. Zhang Jie stood where he was, looking at the distant sea, and inadvertently glanced at the apple in his hand. I was really moved by an apple. Laughing at himself, Zhang Jie put the apple into his mouth and took another bite. Meanwhile, the other side. On a certain unknown sea area, a dog-headed warship flying the marine flag high. Sailing on the calm sea at a constant speed as usual. Inside the cabin, an old man with gray hair was eating a pack of senbei with great relish. On the side of the old man, on the chair on the side of the room, a tall man was sitting quietly and taking a nap. Both of them are well-known generals in Marine. The old man is the Naval Headquarters Vice Admiral Garp, who is known as a hero. And the tall man is Admiral of Headquarters, Aokiji. Kacha kacha. The crisp sound of senbei being chewed echoed in the room. Suddenly, Aokiji, who was sitting on a chair beside him, suddenly opened his eyes. Garp, who was eating the senbei, also stopped his movements at the same moment. Almost coincidentally, the two raised their heads and looked in the same direction at the same time. This breath, while whispering, the two stood up at the same time and walked outside. Just as Garp walked out of the room and came to the corridor, a Marine sergeant hurriedly ran towards him. Vice Admiral Garp, Marshal Sengoku is calling. But before the Marine non-commissioned officer finished speaking, Garp waved his hands with a dignified expression. 0. Let him wait. At this moment, the Marine sergeant who came to report couldn't hold back on the spot. That's the Marshal's call. Even if you let me say that, I don't have the guts to say it. Vice Admiral Garp, you aren't original. However, Garp still didn't give the sergeant a chance to finish speaking, so he interrupted directly. The old man will contact him personally, now. I have other things to do. After all, Garp and Aokiji directly passed the Marine sergeant who reported. This made the Marine non-commissioned officer feel helpless. Vice Admiral Garp is still going straight, going his own way. This breath is not simple. Mr. Garp, Aokiji said calmly. Garp just grinned when he heard this. Hey, whoever it is, if. Boom. Before Garp could finish speaking, the ceiling on both sides in front of them was smashed through. Boom. A man in yellow and white striped clothes also fell not far from them. Boom. It's just that when Aokiji and Garp saw the man's appearance clearly, the two of them lost their composure for an instant. At the same moment, all the faces showed that horrified expression, and they exclaimed in surprise. Cough cough cough. Under the stunned gaze of both Aokiji and Garp, Kizaru let out a violent cough. The bright red blood also flowed out of his mouth along with his coughing, and fell on the wooden deck. Porisalino, what's wrong with you? Who hurt you like this? Garp took 2 steps forward and asked with a somewhat eager tone. At this time, Kizaru's body was covered with blood. The marine overcoat he was wearing was already in tatters, and even the yellow and white striped clothes had a big tear, bleeding out. Seeing Kizaru's embarrassed Garp, I already felt a strong uneasiness in my heart. He also couldn't imagine who could hurt Kizaru into such a mess. It is even more unimaginable that he was hurt like this in the first half of the grand line called Paradise, Pregnant. But Kizaru didn't answer Garp's words. Instead, he forcibly suppressed the act of coughing, and reminded with difficulty in that hoarse voice like hell. Above, leave me alone. Watch out for the top. It was also at the moment when Kizaru's voice fell. In the air above the warship, there was a sound of piercing the air suddenly. Whoosh! Aokiji and Garp, who were standing not far from Kizaru, also shrank their pupils uncontrollably and held their breath suddenly after hearing the sound of breaking through the air. This coercion. Hey. While thinking about it, Maonan and Garp both turned around and looked up at the same time. Through the gap that Kizaru's body pierced through, he looked at the blue sky. Immediately afterwards, they saw a figure. At this moment, it is hovering in the air and looking down at them. It was a man with a pair of huge black wings, wearing a white jumpsuit, and green pupils. His pair of huge black wings spread out, his feet stepped on the void and hovered, giving off an invisible and terrifying powerful aura. Like the tidal current, waves of reverberation sweep across all directions. The expressions of Aokiji and Garp, who could clearly sense the horror of this aura below, all changed drastically, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Hey, Pelusalino. Where did you provoke such a guy? Even if he was facing a big enemy, Aokiji did not forget to tease Kizaru. This look doesn't look like he can be good. What's the background of this guy? Garp also asked aloud. Ahem, this matter. I'm afraid I don't have so much time to explain clearly, he is a pirate. Kizaru stood up with difficulty, propping up the wooden floor, and made a slap to the person who was chasing him brief introduction. And the person who comes after him is naturally Cypher, who fought against the pirates. Looking at the three people below, Cypher can clearly recognize that the strength of these three people is not too weak. Those emerald green eyes narrowed slightly. Cypher's cold voice then spread slowly. You are not on my kill target list, my target is behind you. Get out of the way. Hearing Cypher's wild and straightforward words, Garp below couldn't help grinning immediately. HMPH. Want to kill someone? Then you have to ask my iron fist if I agree. Ha! The icy cold air visible to the naked eye spilled out of Aokiji's mouth. Aokiji looked at Cypher in midair, and said in the same cold voice. If you still want to fight, then we don't mind playing with you. Hearing this, Cypher's face didn't change at all, it was still as cold as the winter snow. I say it one last time, get out of the way. This is not a discussion with you, but an order. Humanity. Aokiji and Garp didn't move at all. On the contrary, Aokiji's whole body exudes breath, and the biting cold air overflows. So much so that his body surface was covered with a thin layer of frost. In the rear, Kizaru also took a few breaths, and came behind Aokiji and Garp. You look like this, can you still fight? Garp asked Kizaru abruptly. Kizaru erased the bloodline from the corner of his mouth. I might not be his opponent fighting alone, but, after 110 rounds, I'm still fine. In midair, Cypher looked down and still had no intention of handing over Kizaru, nor was he talking nonsense. The palm of the right arm that hangs down naturally is slightly opened at this moment. Shish! Emerald green flashes suddenly flashed, and the moonlight sword was instantly condensed into shape, and Cypher held it in the palm of his hand. Below, Aokiji and others also moved instantly. It was just the moment when the Cypher moonlight sword condensed and formed. A terrifying chill rushed out of the warship suddenly. Boom! A huge icicle with a sharp tip rises from the ground, heading straight for Cypher in midair. Shua! Seeing this, Cypher held the moonlight sword in his hand, took one step forward, and cut it down with one strike. Boom! Shoo! That huge icicle was split open by Cypher's sword. But at the same time, a golden flash almost stuck to the surface of the icicle and flashed to Cypher's side. When the golden light gathered, Kizaru's figure was revealed again. At this moment, holding the Tiankongyan sword in his hand, he walked towards Cypher without hesitation. Shua! At the same time, Aokiji's figure also rushed to the top of the icicle and came to the side of Cypher. Almost exactly the same moves as Kizaru. Holding an ice sword, Aokiji slashed at Cypher without hesitation. Shua! Facing the sharp attack coming from both sides at the same time. Cypher's face was calm and unwavering. The hand holding the moonlight sword directly met Kizaru's Amakongan sword with a backhand. When, boom, Aokiji's slashes followed one after another, but facing his ice sword, Cypher directly raised his left hand and reached forward to grab it. Boom! Aokiji's ice sword was caught by Cypher with his bare hands. This sudden scene made Aokiji's pupils shrink slightly, and he said in shock. This guy just caught it with his bare hands. It's just that Aokiji's idea has just arisen. Cypher made a sharp push with his left hand. Crack! In the next second, only a crisp sound was heard. Dang clang! Aokiji's ice sword was crushed by Cypher like glass. The next moment, Cypher raised his finger towards himself, and the fingertips flashed emerald green. The breath of terror leaked from Cypher's fingertips with the sudden appearance of emerald green flashes. Aokiji, who felt this breath, was terrified. "Where are you looking, smelly brat?" At this moment, Garp's figure arrived along with the voice. Facing Cypher, who was looking directly at Aokiji, Garp didn't hesitate. Clenching his fist, he punched Cypher's face. "Taste the iron fist of the old man." Boom, accompanied by a dull beating sound echoed. Cypher flew upside down and fell towards the sea below. Shua! But just when Cypher's figure was about to fall into the sea, suddenly, Cypher's black wings trembled. Boom, boom. The calm sea suddenly exploded. Cypher rear. The impact of the huge remaining power caused a huge semi-arc wave to surge up for several meters. And Cypher himself hovered above the sea surface, stood up straight, and stabilized his figure. Crash! The salty sea water poured down like a torrential rain. Before Cypher could make a counterattack, Aokiji's figure landed on the surface of the sea. Crack, crack, almost at the moment Aokiji's legs touched the surface of the sea. The crisp sound of icing echoed. The sea around Aokiji froze in an instant. Not only that, but a biting chill rushed out from Aokiji's body. Like a gust of wind, it swept towards Cypher not far away. Crack, crack, all of this happened too quickly. Where the cold wind passes, everything is frozen. Even Cypher, who was in the salty raindrop, couldn't leave. Shua! As if in the blink of an eye, Cypher's entire body was covered in frost, and he became frozen into an ice sculpture. Even the sea below him was instantly frozen by the cold air. Crack, crack, the crisp and pleasant sound of seawater freezing echoed on the surface of the sea. "Who, Mr. Garp?" Aokiji exhaled a breath of cold air, and called out in a deep voice. Immediately afterwards, Garp's figure jumped up in response. Whoosh! The sandbag-sized iron fist was clenched tightly, and the veins in Garp's arm bulged. Without the slightest hesitation or mercy, with all his strength, Garp let out a low drink, and threw towards Cypher with the momentum of his body falling. Drink! Cypher, who was frozen in the ice, glanced coldly and locked the figures of Kizaru and Garp in midair. Shish! The moonlight sword in his hand has emerald green arcs beating. In the next moment, the ice that froze him exploded directly. Boom! Swish! 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 Countless pieces of crushed ice shot out in all directions like the bullets that had been discharged from the chamber. Cypher broke free and hovered in midair again. At the moment when the ice was broken, he performed the sound turn steeply, and disappeared in the same place in an instant. Garp's iron fist also came down suddenly at the same moment. Boom! Boom! Due to the disappearance of Cypher, Garp punched with all his strength, and because of this, he missed and hit the frozen ice layer. With just one punch, the ice layer within 100 meters of Fang suddenly cracked, revealing terrifying cracks like spider webs. Boom! Crack! 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 The ice layer within 10 meters of Garp broke suddenly and turned into a large independent ice block. Under the terrifying aftermath of that punch, it suddenly tilted up like a seesaw. Boom buzz! Garp, who was in the middle of the ice collapse, had no time to appreciate his fist power. When Cypher disappeared in front of his eyes, his attack was also in vain. Garp's eyes shrank suddenly, and his heart was shocked. Disappeared. Behind, in the air, Garp, who was keenly aware of Cypher's movements, turned his head in astonishment. I saw Cypher's figure appeared beside Kizaru at some point. Shish! The arc of the moonlight sword in his hand flickered, and the emerald green flash reflected Cypher's cheeks were cold. Without the slightest hesitation, Cypher held the moonlight sword and slashed towards Kizaru. Brush! The ear-piercing sound of piercing through the air roared. But Kizaru was not surprised by the appearance of Cypher, and even expected it. Is the target really me? Kizaru recounted lightly. Without any ambiguity in the Amazono sword in his hand, he directly moved towards Cypher's moonlight sword. Boom! Boom! The two lightsabers clashed fiercely. The bursts of terrifying aftermath condensed into waves of air visible to the naked eye. The wounded Kizaru spoke leisurely against Cypher's attack. I've been waiting for this moment when you attack me. For Cypher's attack, Kizaru dare not say he is familiar with it, but he has already figured it out. After all, he had fought Cypher one-on-one before. Even a few times, almost died in the sudden appearance of Cypher. So in this regard, Kizaru is extra vigilant and prepared for it. Below, above the ice, cold air quickly gathered and condensed on Aokiji's arm. A huge ice bird, condensed into shape and aimed at Cypher. Pheasant beak. Aokiji snorted. It was condensed from cold ice to form an ice bird. At the same time, it uttered a cry, and galloped towards Cypher steeply. Shua. Cypher glanced sideways. Kizaru immediately surpassed Cypher and launched an attack. You'd better stay. Buzz. In an instant, the Tiankongyan sword in Kizaru's hand became golden, and Li Xing also increased by a few points. However, Cypher was not interested in this, and directly dodged to the side tens of meters away. But it was also at the moment behind Cypher's figure. Garp's figure came one after another, and he punched Cypher. Shua. Cypher raised his arms to block. Boom. The dull beating sound resounded throughout, and Cypher's figure flew back on the same path, hitting the huge ice bird that was speeding head-on. Boom. A loud bang echoed. Half of Cypher's body was covered with frost, and the whole body also dragged along cold air and fell to the ice surface. Kizaru seized the opportunity, crossed his arms, and the golden light of the cross in his palm shone. 8-foot Chong Guyu. Numerous light bullets dragged the golden streamer down towards Cypher like raindrops. Swish swish swish. Boom boom boom. This saturated covering blow shattered the frozen ice layer of Aokiji. The white mist turned from ice slag rose and permeated with Kizaru's saturated blow. Boom, boom. As soon as Kizaru stopped, Garp took the lead and stepped directly into the thick white mist, locking on to Cypher's breath and galloping away. Whoosh. But in the next second, Garp groaned. Then the whole person flew out of the thick white mist like a meteor, and smashed heavily on the ice layer. Snort. Call out. Boom, boom. Mr. Garp. Aokiji looked back in astonishment, and subconsciously called out. But in the next second, before he could react, his whole body was instantly locked and covered by a terrifying breath. Nerves were tense in an instant, cold sweat overflowed from his forehead, and Aokiji's intuition warned him crazily at this moment. Danger, danger, danger. I felt the dangerous breath that made people feel as if they were about to suffocate. Aokiji's eyes trembled violently like an earthquake, and an unprecedented look of horror appeared on his face. Also at this moment, a huge buzzing sound resounded. Buzz. In an instant, an emerald green flash with a terrifying aura pierced through the white mist directly. He lunged at Aokiji head-on. Call out. The emerald green light made Aokiji's face turn pale. Aokiji's pupils constricted uncontrollably. Boom. A huge roar exploded. The sea surface frozen by Aokiji, at this moment, collapsed in an instant. Boom. All of a sudden, the calm sea was full of strong winds, and the waves were churning endlessly. The white mist that surrounded Cypher was also dispelled in an instant. It showed Cypher's aloof figure raising his hand and pointing in the direction of Aokiji. There was no emotion in the emerald green eyes. Cypher's expression was as cold as usual, and he said leisurely, I was in a hurry, and you could have saved a life in my limited time to act. But you have chosen a path that must die. Is it because you have never felt fear, so you don't know what kindness is? Stupid human beings. The other side, on the coast of the town where Zhang Jie and others are located. Boss Captain, are we waiting for someone? Fei Na and Meng Na moved to Zhang Jie's side and asked with their heads. Looking at the direction of the sea, Zhang Jie shook his head and said, No, waiting for the boat. Meng Na tilted her head in doubt. Boat. Fina also had a puzzled look on her face. She pointed in the direction of a place and asked, Boat, isn't our ship over there? Why wait? Zhang Jie glanced sideways at Fina and said, The previous ship is no longer able to accompany us on the next voyage, so I am waiting for my new ship to arrive. Is it broken? Fina asked curiously. There was a smile on Zhang Jie's face. No, it's fine, but it can't handle the rest of the pirates. Hearing Zhang Jie's words, Fei Na only felt in the fog. But she herself revealed a half-understanding expression, and nodded thoughtfully. Is that so? It was also at this time that white mist suddenly rose from the calm sea. In almost a moment, this burst of white mist enveloped the entire sea area and the town that was still burning. It's getting foggy. At a time like this. In the rear, Luxini and the others looked around in fear, exclaiming in surprise. It was a fine day, but it suddenly became foggy, which is unusual no matter how you look at it. If early morning would make sense, but the problem is, it's not early morning. Coming. It was also when Lucchini and the others panicked that Madara suddenly said something in a deep voice. These sudden words stunned Lucchini and the others. Here, what's coming? Lucchini's words fell. In the thick white mist above the sea, two faint blue flames suddenly lit up. Fina and Mengna were so frightened by the sudden eruption of the blue flame that their hairs stood on end, their whole bodies shivered, they pointed at the blue flame in midair, and even stuttered. That, open corner bracket, fire. It's just that they haven't waited for the two of them to finish talking. The faint blue flame in the white mist quickly approached them. Soon, an extremely huge ship was also revealed in the white mist. Rumble. The double-sided skull flag hanging high on the mast sail was hunting under the blowing of the sea wind. This is a huge silver-white ship. On the bow of the ship, there is also an eye-catching and huge sculpture of a skull. It was dressed in armor, its eye sockets were filled with two blue flames, and it held a huge knight's long sword upside down in both hands. Just looking at it is like facing a Shinigami, it's creepy and terrifying. And this is what Zhang Jie got from the system. The ship, Death Song, wandering in the river of darkness. Bursts of faint buzzing echoed in the white mist. It's like the symphony of the undead, and it's like the mournful and painful wailing of the undead. Meng Na and Fei Na saw the huge sculpture of the skeleton knight, and then heard a strange sound. I was so frightened that I burst into tears, and my soul ran out. Even Lucchini and the others, when facing the death praise, the whole body trembled violently uncontrollably. At this moment, footsteps suddenly sounded on the deck of the death praise. Da 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 da. Immediately afterwards, a blindfolded woman with waist-length purple hair came to the side of the Ode to Death ship, looked at Zhang Jie below and smiled slightly. Captain. And she is also Zhang Jie's new convoy from the world of fate, Medusa. Zhang Jie nodded. At the same time, he smiled and greeted the crew behind him. Let's go. Board the ship. A gust of breeze blew past Zhang Jie's voice. The white mist that surrounded and filled the surrounding area was also dispelled in an instant. A half-empty and half-solid ladder, like a ladder built with dense white bones, emerged, connecting the ship and the coast. The crew of the battle pirates is also under the leadership of Zhang Jie. Step up the stairs and board the Death Song. It was also at the moment when he boarded the ship that Zhang Jie immediately felt the extraordinariness of Ode to Death. Its information also passed into Zhang Jie's mind in an instant. This is not a flashy boat, but a warship with real materials. Although there is no naval gun, the huge sculpture of the skeleton knight at the bow is active. Not only that, ships also have various versions. With the extremely aggressive active ability, Death Sentence, the skeleton knight with the long sword upside down swings the giant sword to slash. Zhang Jie can drive and manipulate with only thoughts. Soul Shock, as the name suggests, this is the power of the skeleton knight itself. Undead Symphony, the praise of the undead, has the effect of confusing the mind. Mist Stealth, attracting white fog. Fresh Soul, the ship has self-awareness. While Zhang Jie immersed himself in learning about the capabilities of the ship, the members of the battle pirates also began to look at their new ship. This ship looks pretty good, Hungry Wolf said with a smile on his lips, looking around. On the side, Yi Ji Yu Yuta also echoed. Yes, Obito. It's also much more spacious than the last ship. Madara. Not bad. Compared with Madara and others' calmness and composure, Fina and Mengna obviously seemed a little scared. Looking at the unfamiliar environment around her, Mengna subconsciously grabbed the corner of Fina's clothes and whispered. Fina, who was terribly frightened herself, trembled in fright when she was pulled and shouted by Mengna. Even though it was quickly realized that it was Mengna's voice, Fina was still a little scared, and even stuttered when speaking. Dream, Mona. Meng Na, who was still a little scared at first, was completely forgot to be afraid by Fina's sudden reaction. In the next second, she only heard a questioning question. Are you afraid, Fina? How? How could it be? I'm not afraid. Don't be afraid, Mengna. Fina was a little ashamed, suppressing the fear in her heart and comforting. On the other side, Luxini and the others were more shocked than afraid. I am shocked by this huge and magnificent ship. Is this ship, is it really a ship? Augustus suddenly said something nonsensical. And this also made Lucchini, who was still shocked by the size of the ship, turn her head and said. What are you saying? Augustus didn't answer. On the contrary, Gro, who was at the side, turned his head slightly, looked at Lucini with a pale face, and said, "Didn't you notice it? Don't you feel it? Facing this ship, don't you have the feeling that you are facing them?" Lucini was taken aback when she heard this. But at this moment, she has already realized that things are not that simple. Her eyes trembled uncontrollably, and Lucini stared at Jero, with strong uneasiness in her heart. "What are you talking about?" The other side. After carefully perceiving the capabilities of the ship, Zhang Jie slowly opened his eyes. Looking around, Zhang Jie couldn't help narrowing his eyes slightly at the calm coast. Quiet, unusually quiet. The calm appearance on the sea did not look like the tragic battle just started. And, most importantly, I couldn't hear the sound and movement of the battle between Cypher and Kizaru. Thoughts fluctuated in his heart. Zhang Jie couldn't help but looked up in the direction Cypher left, lost in thought. "It's been so long, haven't you come back yet? Was it delayed?" "No. Compared to the fact that Kizaru was able to hold back Cypher, I am more willing to believe that it was Kizaru who fled under Cypher's attack, preventing Cypher from killing him in a short time. Even for Marine Admiral with Logia sparkling fruit, facing Cypher, only this kind of embarrassment is normal. Is there anything bothering you?" Also, when Zhang Jie fell into deep thought, a gentle voice suddenly came from Zhang Jie's ear. This made Zhang Jie come back to his senses in meditation, and looked sideways. And the person who spoke is also Sister R, who was ridiculed, and filled up the agility attribute, Medusa. Zhang Jie chuckled, annoyed. That's not really the case. It was also when Zhang Jie's words fell. In the rear, the floor space on the deck of the ship suddenly twisted. Immediately afterwards, a white skeleton arm protruded from the twisted floor space. Followed by that hoarse voice that seemed to come from hell. "Lord, your humble servant, come to CCEI, greet you." A hoarse voice echoed. From the distorted floor space, a skeleton with two blue flames in its eye sockets slowly crawled out. On one side, I witnessed the skeleton crawling out of the floor. Both Fei Na and Meng Na gasped at the same time, their bodies froze, and they rolled their eyes. Plop! There was a dull sound of falling. The two little girls were stunned almost at the same time, and fell to the ground at the same time. As for Lucy, the moment she saw the skeleton crawling out of the floor, she belatedly realized what Gro and the others had said before. The pupils trembled violently like an earthquake, and Lucini covered her mouth, trying not to let herself scream out. Her face at the moment is already similar to that of Jero and Augustus. All that boundless fear and horror. Glancing at Fina and Mengna, who were stunned, Zhang Jie turned his head, looked at the skeleton crawling out of the floor, and asked back. "Servant." The skeleton raised his hand to caress his chest, and bowed slightly to Zhang Jie respectfully. "Yes, my exalted lord. I'm your most loyal servant, and I'm also the ship spirit of the deathly ode, Fresh Spirit." Hearing this, Zhang Jie narrowed his eyes slightly. He originally thought that the living spirit was a soul-like thing with self-awareness, and it was necessary to be able to communicate with it. Unexpectedly, it could appear in a physical form. These thoughts flashed through Zhang Jie's mind. Zhang Jie became curious about the abilities of the fresh spirit. Instinctive intuition told him that the living spirit could appear in front of him in a physical form, and its ability was not limited to just being able to speak. The skeleton was so close, Zhang Jie felt it clearly. Even it has impressive strength. Apart from being able to control the death praise and its abilities, the only ability I have is the ability to cross space and reach the place of your conquerors. As soon as the skull said this, Zhang Jie frowned. In the next second, the skeleton immediately explained. "Lord, you may be mistaken. I can only sense your emotions, but I can't know the thoughts in your heart." At this moment, Zhang Jie looked at the skeleton and smiled meaningfully. Interesting. Also at the same moment, there was a hint of a smile on the skeleton's faceless face. "It is my greatest honor to gain your trust." Zhang Jie smiled and turned to look at the blue sea. After a while, he heard him speak leisurely. "You said that you can cross space and expand the location of my conquerors, right? Bring Cypher back. I'm getting ready to set sail." Hearing this, the skeleton saluted Zhang Jie respectfully again. "The will of the Lord must be carried out." While speaking, the skeleton's figure slowly dived, sinking into the floor of the deck. As for Zhang Jie, his eyes were still looking into the distance, not knowing what he was thinking in his heart. At the same time, in a certain sea area, the fierce battle of Ulquiorra Cypher 1v3 is still going on. Facing the siege of Kizaru, Garp, and Aokiji, even if there is only one Cypher, Cypher is not at all inferior. Boom, boom, a huge roar echoed, the air waves visible to the naked eye rippling away like twinkling lights. The ice layer condensed on the sea surface was shattered into countless pieces of ice under the aftermath of the terrifying bombardment. Shua, a golden flash flashed to Cypher's side. Kizaru held the Amakongan sword and slashed at Cypher's neck. Clang, the sharp long sword roared through the air. Also at the same time as Kizaru slashed. On the other side, Garp with several wounds on his body and a bleeding head galloped towards Cypher. Cypher, who was in the middle of the bread, didn't even look at Kizaru who was approaching. With a touch of the left hand, the moonlight sword condensed in response. Shoo! With the swing of the moonlight sword, Kizaru's Amakongan sword also collided with Cypher's moonlight sword fiercely. Boom! The roaring sound spread again. Garp's figure also arrived at this moment, clenched his sandbag-sized fist, and punched Cypher's face. Shua! Cypher glanced sideways, his body moved quickly, and he leaned back to avoid it. Garp's fist slashed across Cypher's cheek with a whistling wind. Cypher looked calm. The moonlight sword, which was in a stalemate with Kizaru, was pushed forward violently under the force of Cypher's left hand. Boom! Kizaru's Amazono cloud sword, and even his whole body were slightly shaken away. And this also made Kizaru feel bad. Because he is shaken away, it means that Garp will face Cypher alone, even if it is just a breath, the danger is huge. Garp didn't stop attacking because of Kizaru's shout. Even though he was bruised, even if the punch just now missed, he still worked hard and swung another punch towards Cypher. Swish! The roar of the fist peak produced a piercing explosion. But Cypher, who freed his hands, didn't have the slightest fear of it. Hela! The arc jumped, and the emerald green flash pierced Garp's eyebrows in an instant. It was the moonlight sword that Cypher was holding. Its speed is so fast that it has reached the point where ordinary people cannot catch it with naked eyes. However, in this flashy moment, a figure suddenly descended from the sky holding an ice thorn, directly hitting the moonlight sword stabbed by Cypher. Boom, boom, under that huge impact force. Even Cypher's stabbed moonlight sword was forcibly changed its trajectory, and fell heavily on the ice surface, making a loud roar. Boom, the thick layer of ice shattered under the violent impact. Countless pieces of ice were shaken up like a burst of white mist. Cypher's eyes were cold, but his expression was extremely calm. He looked at the uninvited guest who suddenly appeared in front of him with deep eyes. And Aokiji didn't show weakness at all. His eyes are firm and cold, looking directly at Cypher, his momentum is not weak at all. It was also at this moment that the whistling buzzing sound exploded. Swish! Drink! Garp sneered and swung a fist. The white mist formed of ice slag was pierced by the wind of his fist, and hit Cypher's face at the same time. Cypher immediately raised his right arm to resist. Boom! Accompanied by the echo of a dull blow, Cypher's serpentine slid sideways several meters under Garp's terrifying punch. It's just, even in the state of sliding out. While Cypher stabilized his figure, he still had enough strength to attack Garp and Aokiji. Almost at the moment when he slid out, the moonlight sword in his hand was thrown out by him. Throwing to Garp and Aokiji. Shoo! The sharp piercing sound roared. The moonlight sword turned into a stream of emerald green light and headed towards Aokiji and Garp. Ice cube! Aokiji's pupils shrunk slightly, and while he was horrified, he decisively activated his own fruit ability. Kacha kacha! A thick wall of ice rose up in front of Garp and him. Immediately afterwards, there was a big boom and a loud bang. Boom, boom, like a bubble, the thick ice layer was lifted up in pieces and burst into pieces in midair. And the countless shattered ice flew out together. And Aokiji and Garp flying upside down like a kite with a broken string. Shish! At the same time as the two flew out, Kizaru, who was just behind the two flying upside down, was galloping towards them holding the Amakongan sword. On the other side, Cypher, who slid out sideways, quickly stabilized his figure. Without the slightest stagnation or delay. The moment he stood still, he exerted all his strength and galloped towards Aokiji and Kizaru who were flying backwards. Boom! The sound of tremors exploded. The ice layer exploded suddenly. And Cypher himself shot out like an arrow that left the string. Whoosh! Kizaru this way. Even though Garp and Aokiji were flying backwards in his direction, Kizaru had no intention of catching them either. He just ran directly between Garp and Aokiji, and met the galloping Cypher. Shish! There was an electric arc beating again in Cypher's hand, and then, the moonlight sword was once again condensed in his hand. Almost at the same instant, the speeds of Kizaru and Cypher suddenly soared, and they turned into an emerald green light and a golden light respectively, and they met in an instant. Shua, shua, shua. Dang 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 dang. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of continuous strikes echoed. Cypher and Kizaru confront each other more than 10 times in an instant. The emerald green moonlight sword and the golden Amazono cloud sword shone like streamers when held by their respective masters. The fierce and quick confrontation is even more dazzling. On the other side, Aokiji, who lost his center of gravity and flew upside down, gritted his teeth and waved his hand. Boom, boom. Immediately, several thick ice walls rose up behind the two of them, flying upside down. Immediately afterwards, the figures of the two slammed into the rising ice wall. Boom 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 boom. After collapsing several ice walls in a row, Aokiji and Garp barely stopped. Puff! Aokiji, who felt his throat was slightly sweet, spat out a mouthful of bright red blood. Garp on the other side is not much better. Blood welled up in his throat, but he swallowed it forcefully, and then slowly stood up leaning against the ice wall. On the other side, Aokiji wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He also stood up with firm eyes. Sorry, Mr. Garp, that's the only way to stop us. Garp glanced at Aokiji, and then his eyes fell on Kizaru and Cypher, who were fighting fiercely again. The old man's body is still strong, but the bones are not broken, right? While speaking, Garp had strode towards Cypher. It's such a time, and Aokiji, who was still being teased, smiled helplessly. I still have strength, at least I can't die. That guy is really as strong as a monster. Hearing this, Garp looked at Cypher with an extraordinarily solemn look and gaze. From the appearance of Pelusalino in front of us in such a mess, we should understand that the enemy is not easy. However, he can fight against the three of us with his own strength. This kind of thing really sees the devil. Who said it wasn't? Aokiji stepped forward. The pace of the two began to gradually accelerate. After a while, the speed of the two of them suddenly increased, and they galloped towards Cypher one after the other. Boom, whoosh, whoosh. The moment Kizaru made room for the fight, Garp's fist suddenly hit with a whistling sound. Boom, boom. Cypher was knocked back again by Garp's mighty punch. In the next moment, Aokiji's ice came one after another. Kacha kacha, bang, bang, bang. 3 sharp icicles rose from the ground and went straight to Cypher from 3 different directions. Swish swish swish. Also at this moment, Cypher's brows frowned slightly. Why are you still so persistent? Haven't you experienced the power gap between you and me? The cold and flat voice spread slowly. Cypher held the moonlight sword, and suddenly slashed down at the 3 sharp icicles stabbing towards him. Shua, boom. The emerald green light slid down, and the terrifying power of 873 bombarded from above and below. The 3 icicles piercing straight towards Cypher shattered and broke like glass, and even the ice layer under Cypher's feet suddenly collapsed at this moment. Clang, boom. Garp's figure jumped out suddenly, as if he didn't want to give Cypher a moment to breathe. Jumping up to charge up, he punched Cypher with a fierce punch. Shua, but facing Garp's compact offensive, Cypher didn't show any panic at all. Immediately, the moonlight sword in his hand met Garp's punch. Boom, boom. The powerful aftermath of the impact swayed again in the form of air waves visible to the naked eye. Garp gritted his teeth, and the 2 sides became deadlocked for a while. It was also at this moment that Garp, who was staring at Cypher firmly, spoke. Persistence. Gap. What do you think of us? Fragile humans, aren't they? Cypher responded flatly. Then let's see who is more vulnerable in the end. Garp raised his other hand and punched Cypher again. Seeing this, Cypher raised his leg and kicked directly to Garp's chest. Shua, boom, click. There was a crisp sound of bones breaking. Even though Garp's body was strong, under Cypher's merciless kick, there was a fragile cracking sound. But Garp didn't even feel the pain of broken bones. It was as if the broken bone was not his bone. The emerald green light of the moonlight soared as bright. Cypher's archer twisted his wrist and slashed at Garp's throat with a sword. Shua, sudden mutation. At the same instant that Cypher launched an attack on Garp, the ice layer under Cypher's feet was suddenly uprooted. Its speed is so fast and its power is so fierce that it rises nearly 10 meters in the blink of an eye. Boom! Under the effect of the rapid rise of the icicle, Cypher's body seemed to be fixed on the icicle. The icicles kept rising, and Cypher's figure was pushed into the air. The ear-shattering humming suddenly came to mind. Cypher on the icicle subconsciously looked up into the sky. But I saw the second round of scorching sun appearing in the sky at this time. His light even covered the sun. Come on, let's see if this blow can knock you down. In the sky, Kizaru fully activated his abilities. A huge golden light ball condenses and shines impressively. Although at this time he had already been beaten to the point of bleeding by Cypher, his body was covered in blood, and he looked extremely embarrassed. However, this cannot cover up the terrifying aura emitted by the light sphere he gathered. If none of this can break you down, then it will really be a headache. He murmured softly. Kizaru's hand supporting the ball of light suddenly pressed down and swung down. Shua. Also at the moment when Kizaru's arm swung down, the shape of the ball of light changed immediately. In just a moment, the ball of light began to expand and transformed into a flashing cross. The light pointed directly at the Cypher below, and suddenly fell. Clang buzz. In an instant, the entire sky, and even the entire sea area were illuminated by flashes of golden light. What followed was the roar and aftermath of the action caused by hitting the target. Boom, boom, quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. The huge roar resounded through the sky, and the entire sea area was shaken by it at this moment. Below, the thick layer of ice evaporates in an instant. The sea water is pouring into the sky at this moment. A mushroom cloud formed by condensed steam rose slowly. Rumble. The remaining prestige generated after the explosion turned into a wave of remaining prestige visible to the naked eye at this time, engulfing the seawater and sweeping towards the four directions. Boom. This violent turmoil lasted for about half a minute before it gradually showed a tendency to subside. Located on the surface of the sea with choppy waves, Aokiji and Garp stood on an ice floe, looking at the mushroom cloud formed by water vapor from a distance. Can this solve him? Aokiji asked subconsciously. On the side, Garp spoke with a solemn expression. Have no idea, maybe it can solve his problem. At least in my heart, that's what I hope for. It was also when Garp's words fell. Kizaru's figure fell from the sky and landed on this piece of ice floe. Shua, da. This time the whereabouts, Kizaru failed to stand firm. Almost exhausted, he staggered and fell to the ice. Fortunately, Aokiji, who was on the side, had quick eyesight and quick hands, so he helped him and prevented him from falling. Are you okay? Aokiji asked softly. Kizaru leaned against Aokiji and stood up slowly, his voice hoarse. I'm afraid there's something wrong. But compared to me, that guy's current. Before Kizaru finished speaking, in the mushroom cloud formed by the thick white mist, an incomparably powerful aura burst out suddenly. Boom. The dark green aura visible to the naked eye suddenly rises from the white mist at this moment. There is a tendency to break through the sky. Boom boom. In the sky, the clouds were pierced and dispersed by the dark green aura that shot straight into the sky. On the surface of the sea, the entire sea area trembled, and the fish in the sea were once frightened and fled in all directions. In the next second, only a leisurely and cold voice came out from the thick white mist. I don't believe that power can't destroy your spiritual realm. The black wings of demons block the sky, and the guns of thunder will destroy the earth. Shish. The harsh tearing sound echoed. The dense white mist, the mushroom cloud formed by the condensed steam, was torn apart at this moment. Out of the white mist, the Cypher with a pair of white horns on its head, a pair of huge black wings on its back, and a tail on its tailbone. At this time, Cypher's aura was as strong as ultimate, and the tear stains under his eyes became more obvious. The penetrating hole in the chest is even more creepy. After all, if an ordinary person was pierced with such a hole in his chest, he would have died long ago. Looking down, Cypher looked down, overlooking Garp et al., located over the sea. The voice was cold as usual. I see. Is this what your fear looks like? Below, above the ice floes on the sea surface. Feeling the terrifying aura emanating from Cypher, feeling the sharply rising momentum. Seeing that brand new posture, the pupils of Garp, Kizaru, and Aokiji trembled violently like an earthquake. On his face, there was also an expression of shock that had never been seen before. At this moment, even Garp couldn't help being hoarse in his words. What on earth is it? Hey, hey, hey. This aura, is it serious? Compared with before, it is more than a little bit stronger. Aokiji's pupils shrank slightly, and his face was full of horror. Kizaru held the Amakongan sword and stared at Cypher. At this moment, his nerves are already tense to the ultimate level, and his spirit is also highly concentrated like never before. This posture, the address I called you earlier was not wrong at all. You really are an out-and-out monster. Feeling the momentum of Cypher that was still gradually rising, Kizaru didn't even dare to blink his eyes. He has seen the power of Cypher, and also experienced the helpless despair. I thought I saw the real Cypher. But the current situation is telling him everything. The strength of this man in front of him is simply unfathomable. The other party didn't even use their full strength before, and beat him and his party so embarrassingly. If you do your best, not only myself, but also Garp and Aokiji, I am afraid they will not be able to go back alive today. Mr. Garp, Kuzan, Kizaru called softly suddenly. And this also caused the two people on the side to turn their heads towards him and forget to come over at the same time. Without any unnecessary nonsense, Kizaru spoke directly with a cold tone. You run away. His goal is me. If he continues to stay, I am afraid that you will also be kept here forever. Aokiji and Garp were slightly taken aback, and then their pupils shrank sharply. This is what Pelusalino said. Is an admiral supposed to say? There are two admirals of headquarters who are known as the most powerful marines, and there is also a marine hero. With three such powerful fighters, how could this happen to one person? Encountering this kind of situation, you have to sacrifice one person, fight for the life of your companions, and escape time. Here are two admirals of headquarters and a marine hero. Aokiji. Hey, what are you talking about? Garp, Pelusalino. Kizaru slowly took 2 steps forward. At this moment, there was no lazy expression on his face. Instead, it was the stern look that never showed on his face. You have already felt it. He is very strong, stronger than us. It was so before, and it is even more so now. The previous him hadn't used his full strength yet, and we still needed 3 people to compete with him. Now he is shown in front of us with a brand new attitude, and his strength is even stronger by more than a little bit. Besides, we don't know whether this is his full effort. If this is not his full strength. No, even if it is his full strength. It's only a matter of time before the 3 of us die here. At this moment, Kizaru felt a little relaxed for no reason. It's like seeing through life and death, seeing through despair. This time, his goal is not to defeat Cypher, but to hold back Cypher. To fight for Garp and Aokiji's chance to survive, to fight for time to escape. Go to calmly. Come on, this time, I will be your opponent alone. Kizaru held the Amakongan sword and looked directly at Cypher with a tone that was neither humble nor overbearing. Garp and Aokiji at the side suddenly shouted in a low voice when they heard the words. Pelusalino, what nonsense are you talking about? Are you trying to shame us and make us run away? The old man's body is stronger than yours. It's just that Kizaru didn't care about Garp and Aokiji's shouting. And that mid-air, the condescending Cypher looked at Kizaru without any contempt in his eyes. In other words, he didn't show any emotion at all. Being my opponent alone, do you think you can defeat me? Kizaru smiled and looked at Cypher, who was in the air. I don't know whether it was because of his disregard, or because of his temper. Kizaru's face showed that somewhat unserious expression again, and he smiled lightly. It's not a question of whether I can beat you, little brother. It's me that must stand in front of you. Cypher was silent for a moment after hearing the sound, and then spoke leisurely. I see. As the voice fell, Cypher finally moved. Snapped. The crisp sound echoed. Cypher clapped his palms together, and then suddenly pulled to the sides. Shish! Countless electric arcs danced with a terrifying aura. The emerald green thunder spear condensed rapidly between Cypher's palms. Boom. Below, above the ice floe. Feeling the palpitating horror, both Garp and Aokiji were startled. Immediately took 2 steps forward. As for what Kizaru said earlier, escape. That's impossible. The marine clothing on the body is not allowed, and the responsibility on the body is not allowed. Their heart does not allow it. Also, as Kizaru said, this is not a question of whether they can fight or not, but that they must stand in front of Cypher. It's coming. With such momentum, maybe the 3 of us will die here. Garp reminded heartily. Kizaru couldn't help turning his head when he heard the words, and said leisurely. Leave, Mr. Garp, staying is just adding meaningless death. His goal is me. If I stay, I can still fight for you. Before Kizaru could finish speaking, Aokiji interrupted him directly. Okay, Pelusalino, stop talking about these useless words, find a way to block that guy's next attack. Survival is the real thing, and that's what you need to think about. While speaking, Aokiji's whole body was filled with cold air, and half of his body was covered with frost. And in that mid-air, Cypher, who condensed the thunder spear, didn't stagnate at all. He raised his right hand sharply to hold the gun barrel of the thunder spear. Clatter. In the next second, Cypher took a step in the air, leaned back, and then slammed the thunder spear in his hand towards Garp and the others. Shua. Clang buzz. There is a suggestion for the author to change the title of Cypher to Xiaowu, which is more recognizable, and the replacement is adopted below. The sharp and ear-piercing whistling sound resounded in all directions. The emerald green flash reflected the sky and the earth, reflecting the entire sky and even the sea area below into an emerald green. And the thunder gun, with a terrifying aura of destruction, went straight to Garp, Kizaru, and Aokiji. Seeing this, the 3 Garp people on the ice floes felt their hearts tense. The aura and momentum emanating from the thunder spear are really too powerful. So powerful, at the moment when Xiaowu was about to throw the thunder gun. They tasted the breath of death, and vaguely saw themselves after becoming undead. Porisalino, Aokiji shouted in a deep voice. Kizaru on the side didn't hesitate at all, and replied in a deep voice. I know, Shu. As Kizaru's voice sounded, the golden flash suddenly illuminated the surroundings, occupying a place in this world illuminated by emerald green light. Also at the same time, Aokiji's whole body was covered with frost, and the terrifying cold air spread from his body and spread to all directions. Kacha kacha kacha. In the next moment, under the urging of Aokiji's full strength, a thick wall of ice suddenly rose from the ground, blocking them in front of them. Boom, 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 boom. Also at the moment when the ice wall rose, the thunder spear thrown by Xiaowu had already arrived. What followed was the huge roar that resounded through the heavens and the earth. Boom, boom, under the mighty power of the thunder spear. Waves up to hundreds of meters were stirred up. In the next instant, the sea surface of the entire sea area submerged and collapsed. What followed was the huge sea wave that was shaken up to a height of hundreds of feet and spread outward in a circular shape. Boom. After the huge power of the thunder spear caused such a big commotion. There is still a lingering prestige, forming a wave of air visible to the naked eye and spreading in all directions. Boom. In the sky, even the white cloud floating above the sky, seems to be avoiding its edge at this moment. Disappeared in the sky in an instant. The sun shines brightly. Xiaowu's figure hovered in the air, bathing in the sunlight like a god. Although his eyes were looking at the huge destruction and movement caused by the thunder gun, but Xiaowu really cared about watching, but it was something else. After staring at Xiaowu's deep emerald green eyes for a moment, from his mouth, his cold voice came again. Humans are really an incredible species, they are such fragile creatures, but they can bring people unexpected miracles. Then, fragile and tenacious human beings, can you still survive the second blow of the thunder gun? Shish. The emerald green thunder shone, and the thunder gun that exuded this terrifying and destructive aura was once condensed by Xiaowu and held in the palm of his hand. Stepping on the air with his right foot, Xiaowu leaned back slightly, showing the throwing dog again. Boom. Suddenly, Xiaowu's aura suddenly rose sharply, and his gaze shifted from Garp, Kizaru, and Aokiji in an instant. It landed on the surface of the sea in another place. At this moment, even Xiaowu couldn't help showing a little surprised look on his face. Whose eyes are you watching? Who, calling my name? Xiaowu's eyes were wandering, and the thunder spear in his hand was about to move. Above the sea surface, the space suddenly twisted and deformed. In the next second, a skeleton arm suddenly protruded from the surface of the sea. What followed was the skeleton that completely crawled out of the distorted space. Crack, click, the crisp sound of bones colliding echoed above the sea. What followed was a hoarse voice that seemed to come from hell. "The Lord is calling you. Ulquiorra cipher, come with me." Seeing the appearance of the skeleton and feeling the aura emanating from the skeleton, Xiaowu had a faint feeling in his heart. "Master, Commander." The skeleton stepped on the sea and walked slowly towards Xiaowu's direction. "The Lord is about to set sail, and now you are the only one who has not returned. The Lord is waiting, and the minister is calling. Come with me." The skeleton's voice was hoarse and cold. In midair, Xiaowu's emerald green eyes looked not far away, in the direction of Garp, Aokiji and Kizaru. There was a long silence. Only then did Xiaowu respond softly. "I see." During the words, a dark green breath overflowed from his whole body. Soon, a silver-white long knife appeared in Xiaowu's hand. And he, the horns on his head and the black wings on his back, have also dissipated and returned to his original appearance. Shua shua shua. Waving the black-winged demon in his hand, Xiaowu put it back into its sheath, and then slowly turned to face the skeleton walking towards him on the sea below. Da da da. Although his feet didn't touch the ground, there was still a slight sound of footsteps as Xiaowu moved forward. Cough cough cough. Cough cough cough. Hoo hoo. Just at this moment, a violent cough echoed on the surface of the sea. Garp surfaced with Kizaru and Aokiji alone. On the right side, all the blood on Kizaru's face faded, and he was as pale as snow, so weak that he was ultimate. On the other side, although Aokiji is fine, his complexion is still not much better. Stopped. Why? Garp looked around and was deeply puzzled by Xiaowu's stop attack. As the saying goes, take advantage of your illness to kill you. If Xiaowu tried his best to kill them at this time, with their current state, they might not be able to last even a minute. But the opponent actually stopped attacking. Give up the chance to kill them. Feeling deeply puzzled, Garp looked around, looking for Xiaowu's figure. And Aokiji on the side, like Garp, is eagerly looking for Xiaowu's figure. Because he didn't feel that the battle was over. Finally, after looking around for a moment, they saw Xiaowu, who was in midair, who had already released the returning blade status, and was about to leave to return to fight against the pirates. Not only that, they also saw a dark and distorted space in the middle of the sky, and saw a pair of skeletons. And Xiaowu, under their noses, followed the skeleton's footsteps, and stepped into the twisted dark space. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.